Chapter 2869. The sword of the sun-piercing rainbow was obviously different from the myriad feather burial. Comparatively, the myriad feather burial was obviously more flashy. However, the sword of the sun-piercing rainbow was definitely more like a heavy sword without a sharp edge. Good sword. Even Knight Sorrow couldn't help but praise. His opponent's sword move was extremely imposing. The White Tiger Supreme and Ancestor Phoenix Supreme also nodded at Myriad Sword Sect's sword move. Myriad Sword Sect was currently the ruler of the God Realm with the most potential. Naturally, he was capable. Otherwise, even if the White Tiger Supreme was his uncle, he wouldn't be of much help. Let's see how you're going to break it. This move was already one of Myriad Sword Sect's most important killing moves. He roared after thrusting out his sword. The master of the 10,000 Sword Sect's long hair fluttered in the wind at this moment. He had completely entered a mysterious state of selflessness. He didn't hold back at all as he integrated himself into the sword move. Divine Origin Trapping Array. Knight Sorrow could have dodged Myriad Sword Sect's move. However, he didn't. Instead, he used the Divine Origin Trapping Array. This Divine Origin Trapping Array was a variant of the Divine Origin Dragon Locking Array. Knight Sorrow had further improved it. After the improvement, it was more convenient to use in battle. The energy consumption was also better. However, the trapping effect was very good. Boom! Myriad Sword Sect's sword, which was originally aimed at Knight Sorrow, was blocked by the Divine Origin Trapping Array. Instantly, his sword struck the array's barrier. Although the Divine Origin Trapping Array was directly pierced by the sword, Myriad Sword Sect's sword had almost lost its power. 33 Heaven's Secret Battle Technique. At this moment, Knight Sorrow took the opportunity to use the 33 Heavens Battle Secret Technique, greatly increasing his strength. Then, he used the Divine Origin Trapping Formation again, locking down the Master of 10,000 Swords position and directly striking his sword out of his hand. Now that you don't have a divine artifact with you, let me see how good your close combat skills are. After striking Myriad Sword Sect's sword out of his hand, Knight Sorrow immediately began close combat with him. Do you think I'm afraid of a divine king like you? Even though the 10,000 Swords Sect had not gained the upper hand since the beginning of the battle, he still felt that Knight Sorrow could not possibly be perfect in every aspect. He didn't even pick up his sword from the ground. Instead, he chose to engage in close combat with Knight Sorrow. However, Knight Sorrow's close combat abilities were very strong, and he displayed an extremely wild fighting style. It was almost like he was sacrificing 800 to injure the enemy. Very soon, he and the 1,000 Swords Sect were both heavily injured. However, since both sides were injured, their reactions were different. Knight Sorrow had chosen this method of battle, and the 1,000 Swords Sect had been forced to fight this way. Originally, the 1,000 Swords Sect thought that he could easily defeat Knight Sorrow, but now he realized that the lower Divine King in front of him was definitely at the level of a sovereign. Even though he was not necessarily stronger than himself, he was definitely not much weaker. Furthermore, there was an indescribable wildness on Yishang's body. When fighting him, the Myriad Sword Sect felt like they were facing an ancient ferocious beast. That kind of ferocious battle intent was simply unlike that of a cultivator from the God Realm. Now you know fear. Even though they were evenly matched, Knight Sorrow's heart was like a boulder. He continued to attack the 1,000 Swords Sect madly like a tidal wave. He knew that the 1,000 Swords Sect's true strength was not weak. In fact, they were even slightly stronger than him. Therefore, when he fought, he had to show his fierceness and make them fear him. Only then would he have a chance to win. Afraid? My 1,000 Swords Sect, afraid of a bumpkin from below? Laughable, truly laughable. The battle was not satisfying at all. The 1,000 Swords Sect was thoroughly enraged. He released his Divine Spirit energy and transformed it into a Divine Spirit sword. He slashed it directly at Knight Sorrow's head. This move did not hit the body, but the Divine Spirit. It was a terrifying attack. Amazing. Facing this move of the 1,000 Swords Sect, Night Sorrow suddenly felt his body tighten. He felt a great pressure. If he was hit by this sword, his divine spirit would probably be directly torn apart. After thinking for a moment, Night Sorrow roared, "Gentle dragon roar." Choosing to use a movement technique to escape at a time like this was obviously not advisable. At this moment, Night Sorrow remembered the gentle dragon roar that the Dragon Sparrow King had taught him. He suddenly roared. Boom! After being attacked by the gentle dragon roar, the divine spirit sword formed by the Thousand Swords sect was instantly shattered. The Thousand Swords sect also spat out blood and abruptly sat on the ground. After being injured by this move, his divine spirit was greatly damaged. He felt as if his divine spirit was being torn apart. How is this possible? How is this possible? It's just a divine king. How is it that he's not weaker than me in all aspects? After being heavily injured by this move, the Thousand Swords sect sitting on the ground was clearly stunned. He did not dare to believe that a lower divine king would not lose to him in any aspect. No. Pull yourself together, I have to pull myself together. If this goes on, even if I'm not defeated, the Supreme Beings will announce the end of the battle. The Thousand Swords sect, who was still a little confused at first, immediately flew up from the ground and floated in the air. He roared crazily, "Die! Great Immortal Sword Technique!" Then, his entire body turned into a sharp sword and blasted towards Night Sorrow. Great Immortal Sword Technique? It's actually the long-lost Great Immortal Sword Technique. This is the Great Tao. The Thousand Swords sect is indeed not bad. The White Tiger Supreme, who was originally extremely disappointed, saw his nephew, the Thousand Swords sect, use the Great Immortal Sword Technique. He immediately calmed down and nodded in satisfaction. In fact, if the Thousand Swords sect was not his nephew, although he would consider the Thousand Swords sect, he would not protect him like today. There would also not be a battle between the two of them. The Great Immortal Sword Technique is indeed this move. It's not without reason that the Thousand Swords sect is favored by everyone. Night Sorrow, I hope you can hold on. As long as you can withstand this move, the winner will be you. Seeing the Thousand Swords sect use the Great Immortal Sword Technique, the Horned Supreme immediately worried for Night Sorrow. Speaking of which, he was the one who used divination to determine that Night Sorrow was the child of destiny. Naturally, he hoped that Night Sorrow could achieve something. Great Immortal Sword Technique? It's definitely not simple to be praised by the Supreme Beings. How should I break it? Facing the Thousand Swords sect who had turned into a sword, Night Sorrow frowned and thought for a moment. Then, his eyes flashed. Imitating the Thousand Swords sect, he also turned into a sword and flew towards the Thousand Swords sect's sword form. Great Immortal Sword Technique? How is this possible? How do you know my ultimate technique? The 10,000 Swords sect was astonished to see Night Sorrow transform into a giant sword as well. Idiot. His move is fake. Can't you tell? Chapter 2870. However, Master 10,000 Swords was clearly confused by the situation, and his mind was clearly shaken. Taking advantage of the fact that Master 10,000 Swords' mind was shaken and did not continue to lock onto Night Sorrow successfully dodged this attack. Although he did not take advantage of Master 10,000 Swords' mind to launch a counterattack, the other party had used up a lot of energy to use such a trump card. When the Great Immortal Sword Technique bombarded the barrier that Ancestor Phoenix had set up for the two of them, Paragon White Tiger was so angry that his nose was crooked. He had never thought that Master 10,000 Swords' mind would be shaken in the middle of a battle. This was fatal to cultivators, especially those at the level of rulers. You've lost. At this time, Night Sorrow did not use up much energy, but after Master 10,000 Swords used the Great Immortal Sword Technique, his body's divine essence was basically emptied. If he continued to fight, he might not even be able to use 60% of his strength. Yi Shang said confidently when he saw Yi Mo's condition. Damn it! How did I fall for your trick just now? The Great Immortal Sword Technique was Master 10,000 Swords' greatest reliance, and at the same time, his greatest pride. Therefore, when Night Sorrow imitated it just now, he was immediately stunned. Now that he thought about it, he was extremely regretful. However, he no longer had the ability to use it again. Your sword technique just now was very exquisite, and its power was also very terrifying. The first time you used it, it was a great threat to me, but if you use it again, it won't be much of a threat. You don't have to think about it anymore, use the Great Immortal Sword technique again. Floating in the void, Night Sorrow looked at Master 10,000 Swords and said. The Great Immortal Sword technique was very mysterious, but after experiencing it once, he had seen through its rules and was no longer afraid of its power. Shameless boasting, if not for my carelessness, you would have already lost. You know that I can't use it again, so you're deliberately showing off, right? Master 10,000 Swords said unwillingly. If he had divine essence to support him to use the Great Immortal Sword technique again, he would not hesitate to use it on Night Sorrow again. However, the divine essence in his body was not enough to support this operation at all. How about this? Let's make a bet. I'll let you consume some Yuan Qi recovery pills. Once you recover, you can use the Great Immortal Sword art again. If I can't handle it, then it'll be my loss. If I can take it, you admit defeat. What do you think? Generally speaking, in this kind of showdown, one could not consume any medicinal pills. However, at this moment, Night Sorrow opened his mouth and gave the Myriad Sword sect a chance. Although he had just arrived at the Eternal Supreme Realm and did not have many tricks up his sleeves, it was still possible for him to withstand the Great Immortal Sword art. After all, he had already deduced the trajectory of the Great Immortal Sword art. Therefore, he was no longer afraid of this move. Hearing this, Master Wan Jian felt as if he had been insulted. He had the strength of an intermediate dominator, while his opponent was only a lower divine king. However, Night Sorrow had given him the opportunity to consume the pill. This caused his cheeks to heat up. He wanted to say something, but he didn't. This is killing and destroying the heart. In the sword sect, swordsmen are born fearless. Whatever you want to do, just follow your heart. Remember, don't lose your confidence. Seeing that Master Wan Jian was in a dilemma, the White Tiger's sovereign immediately reminded him. Even the many supremes present did not notice this sentence. When Master Wan Jian heard it, he immediately felt as if he had been enlightened. In an instant, boundless confidence rose. After a moment of silence, he looked at Night Sorrow and said coldly, I agree to your bet. After saying that, he did not give Night Sorrow or the other supremes a chance to refute. He directly swallowed 3 medicinal pills to recover his vitality and readjusted his strength to the peak. Now that you have recovered your vitality, you can use the Great Immortal Sword art. Night Sorrow said and waited for Master Wan Jian to make his move. The Great Immortal Sword art was more exquisite than any supreme art he had seen in the God realm. He had learned a lot from observing it once. If he experienced it again, he might be able to comprehend his own supreme art. Okay. However, swords have no eyes. If you die under this move, I will not be responsible. Master Wan Jian, who had readjusted his divine realm and aura to the peak, stared coldly at Night Sorrow and prepared his Great Immortal Sword art. This time, Night Sorrow had given him enough time. He could fully display the Great Immortal Sword technique of the Myriad Sword sect. It was even more powerful than the previous attack. Don't worry and use it. I believe that even if I lose, the Supremes won't just watch me be killed. After all, we are learning from each other, not fighting to the death. Night Sorrow said indifferently. He had an aura of disregard for his own life. That boldness of disregard for life and death satisfied not only Supremes Zhu Feng and the Horn Clan, but also some of the other Supremes present. At this point in the battle, they could already confirm that Night Sorrow was a rare genius who needed to be nurtured with all their might. However, there was a bet, and they could not interrupt the battle in front of them. Big Immortal Sword Art. Master Wan Jian, who had been preparing for a while, once again turned into a sharp sword and bombarded Night Sorrow's position. This time, he had completely locked onto Night Sorrow's aura, and had already mentally prepared himself to not be affected by any external factors. However, this time, something that surprised the Wan Jian house happened once again. At this moment, Night Sorrow didn't dodge the Great Celestial Sword Art. Instead, he imitated the Great Celestial Sword Art and attacked. In the void, the two figures had completely turned into similar sword shadows and bombarded the same point. In fact, Night Sorrow had already seen through the Great Immortal Sword Art. He could have dodged it if he wanted to. However, he had seen through the Great Immortal Sword Art in an instant, and suddenly wanted to test its power. After all, although he was a lower divine king, the strength of his body and his understanding of the laws were not much weaker than Master Wan Jian's. Even if his Great Immortal Sword Art was not as powerful as his opponent's, he could definitely put up a fight. You're courting death. Master Wan Jian was completely enraged when he saw Night Sorrow use the same move again. This time, he didn't hesitate at all and directly blasted his attack towards Yi Sorrow. Just in time. Let's test our true strength and see who's stronger. If it was purely for the sake of winning the bet, Night Sorrow could have retreated at this moment, but he did not do so. Because fighting with Master Wan Jian, who had great potential, was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. He wanted to use this opportunity to improve his understanding of the battle between the sovereigns. This time, it doesn't seem fake. How is this possible? He has only seen it twice, and he can imitate its essence. What kind of talent is this? Ancestor Phoenix and the others who were watching from the side were shocked. Even Supreme White Tiger was shocked when he saw Night Sorrow's move clearly. Chapter 2871. Including the elusive City Lord, the White Tiger Sovereign had never seen anyone with Night Sorrow's perception. Aside from the White Tiger Sovereign, the other sovereigns present all looked at Yi Shang in a different light. In Night Sorrow's body, they saw a glimmer of hope that the God Realm no longer had. However, some of the sovereigns lamented that Night Sorrow had appeared too late. There wasn't enough time for him to grow. Otherwise, as long as he became a sovereign, it would mean that the God Realm had the power to fight against sovereigns. Even if they were to compete with the top 100 sovereigns for fortune, they wouldn't be at a disadvantage. As for the 10,000 Sword Sect, his understanding of the Great Immortal Sword technique had already reached a certain level. When he saw Night Sorrow use the Great Immortal Sword technique again, the first thing he wanted to do was curse. However, after a moment of observation, his heart was in turmoil. Although Night Sorrow's move was an imitation of the Great Immortal Sword technique, it was in essence a Great Immortal Sword technique, and it wasn't weak at all. How can this be? How can this be? As he attacked Night Sorrow, the Myriad Swords Master's heart couldn't calm down. The Great Immortal Sword Art was something he had spent an entire 800 years to gain a basic understanding of, and it had taken him roughly 20,000 years to completely grasp it. But now, Night Sorrow had actually been able to imitate it with just 2 glances. This dealt a heavy blow to his confidence. You're unstable. You're bound to lose. Before he clashed with the Myriad Swords Master, Night Sorrow saw that the Myriad Swords Master's mind was unstable again. He calmly transmitted this message. The duel before them was an internal exchange of pointers. Although Night Sorrow was full of fighting spirit, there wasn't a trace of killing intent in his heart. No. I won't lose. In fact, I'll kill you. When he heard Night Sorrow's words, the Myriad Swords Master immediately recovered. As he roared, dense killing intent surged from his body. How can you want to kill when you're just exchanging pointers? How can you achieve great things with such an unstable mind? Seeing the Myriad Swords Master's reaction, Ancestor Phoenix and Ancestor Horn both frowned. In their opinion, a cultivator's strength wasn't the only thing that was important, but also their temperament. The 10,000 Swords Sect had lost their minds in the battle, and now they were bursting with such a strong murderous aura. This was very wrong. The Sword Sect. Winning or losing is important, but in front of so many supreme martial artists, you exposed so many problems with your temperament. Uncle is very disappointed. The White Tiger Sovereign looked at the Myriad Swords Sect that was clashing with Night Sorrow. He knew that even if the Myriad Sword sect won today, it would be impossible to obtain the support of the majority of the Supremes. On the other hand, Knight Sorrow had already proven that he was a lower divine king who could fight against a ruler. Regardless of whether he won or lost, he would be nurtured with all his might. Even if he lost today and couldn't obtain the laws and essences of those invincible sovereigns, he would still be able to obtain other precious resources. Even if they had to force-feed Knight Sorrow, the 9 Heavens Supremes would think of a way to raise his cultivation to the ruler realm as soon as possible. Boom! Just as the White Tiger Sovereign was sighing in his heart, Knight Sorrow and the Myriad Sword sect had completely clashed. Both of their attacks were at the ruler realm. When they collided, the void was completely shattered. However, the Supremes had set up defenses around them, so the City Lord Manor itself wasn't damaged. What's the result? The Supremes present all knew that the battle before them had completely ended. Whether it was the Myriad Sword sect or Knight Sorrow, neither of them had the ability to continue fighting. Ancestor Phoenix Sovereign used her divine sense to investigate and found that the two of them were both standing in the void. Although they looked to be in a sorry state, neither of them had fallen. It was as if they were evenly matched. This is a little surprising. Could it be a draw? The other Supremes naturally also noticed the situation before them. Seeing that neither of them had fallen, the White Tiger Sovereign was a little more satisfied with his nephew. However, this time, he didn't speak. Although he was very satisfied with his nephew, reason told him that Knight Sorrow was the God Realm's territory's future. The current him, at the lower Divine King realm, could already fight the Myriad Sword sect, who was an intermediate ruler. This completely proved his strength and potential. No matter how picky the Supremes were, they couldn't find a reason not to support Knight Sorrow. At this thought, the White Tiger Sovereign said, Knight Sorrow has won this battle. The Myriad Sword sect has the advantage in terms of cultivation realm. Those unrivaled rulers' laws and essences all belong to Knight Sorrow. Since the White Tiger Sovereign had said so, the other Supremes obviously didn't have any objections. However, after the rulers spoke, Knight Sorrow looked at the Myriad Sword sect and said, our battle ends in a draw. We'll split those resources equally. If the God Realm wants to rise, it's not enough to rely on one person's efforts. Moreover, I have my own path to walk. No need. A loss is a loss. The Myriad Sword sect, who was standing in the void, was extremely surprised when he heard Knight Sorrow's words. Because at this moment, he no longer had the ability to move. As long as Knight Sorrow continued to attack, the one who lost would be him. Before the battle, we valued victory and defeat. But now, it doesn't matter. What's important is how we unite and help the God Realm overcome this crisis together. Knight Sorrow knew that the Myriad Sword sect had lost to him, but he had already proved his and Supreme's foresight, so he didn't care about the so-called victory or defeat. Good. That's bold. The White Tiger Sovereign immediately cheered when he heard Knight Sorrow's words. At the same time, if the Myriad Sword sect could obtain the resources of an unrivaled ruler, he would definitely be able to advance to an upper ruler. That would also be a considerable improvement. Moreover, if he absorbed and comprehended the unrivaled ruler's laws, his strength would also improve. As an uncle, he still thought of the Myriad Sword sect. However, the Myriad Sword sect suddenly said, a loss is a loss. I'm inferior to you. The unrivaled ruler's laws and essences all belong to you. He didn't want to accept this gift at all. In the Myriad Sword sect's eyes, this was Knight Sorrow's charity. He didn't need it at all. When the Supremes saw that the Myriad Sword sect wasn't prepared to accept the unrivaled ruler's laws and essences, they were all astonished. But no one tried to persuade him otherwise. In their eyes, giving all the resources to Knight Sorrow so that he could quickly increase his strength was the best outcome for the God Realm. At this time, Knight Sorrow spoke up to persuade him, if nothing unexpected happens, we'll both participate in a certain battle 100 years from now. If you increase your strength, it'll help me and the God Realm. So, you have no reason or right to refuse. Chapter 2872. Since that's Night Sorrow's wish, then let's end this happily for everyone. This battle ends in a draw. The Myriad Sword Sect and Night Sorrow will each receive half of the sovereign's laws and essence, as well as half of the resources. Seeing that Night Sorrow was considering the problem from the perspective of the God Realm, Zhu Feng smiled. Nodding in satisfaction, he said, Myriad Sword Sect, these resources are one of the foundations of the God Realm. I hope you can cherish them well and put all your efforts into increasing your strength and contributing to the God Realm. As for your battle with Night Sorrow, it's just a display of your potential. Don't worry about it. Yes. The Sword Sect will remember the Sovereign's teachings. Originally, Myriad Sword Sect was extremely unwilling, thinking that Night Sorrow was fishing for fame. But soon, with the White Tiger Sovereign's reminder, he understood that Night Sorrow was truly standing from the perspective of the God Realm. That was a kind of boldness, and he was instantly jolted awake. He had come out of his childhood to consider the problems from the perspective of his country. The two of you shake hands and make peace. This battle is over, and it's over. Seeing that Myriad Sword Sect didn't choose to rebel, the White Tiger Sovereign nodded in satisfaction. Then, he called Night Sorrow and Myriad Sword Sect in front of him and had them shake hands and make peace. Good. Night Sorrow will remember this. Night Sorrow said calmly as he shook hands with Myriad Sword Sect. At this moment, his state of mind had changed a little. He realized that the sovereigns of the God Realm were clearly different from some of the sovereigns of the God Realm. Although the White Tiger Sovereign leaned towards Myriad Sword Sect, after he revealed his talent, he didn't show any jealousy or dissatisfaction. Instead, he admired him from the bottom of his heart. It was obvious that these people were looking at things from the perspective of the entire God Realm. No discord, no concord. From now on, Brother Yi, please guide me. At this time, Myriad Sword Sect had gradually walked out of the shadow of defeat. He didn't completely wallow in his failure and couldn't extricate himself. After all, the God Realm was no longer like this. As the sovereigns who grew up in the God Realm, they didn't have that kind of invincible spirit in their hearts that couldn't lose. Otherwise, Myriad Sword Sect wouldn't have lost his mind time and time again when fighting with Night Sorrow. Good. From now on, we'll be friends. We can interact more and exchange experiences or exchange pointers. Night Sorrow nodded politely. Good. The God Realm's territory needs this kind of harmony. Supreme Ancestral Dragon said when he saw Night Sorrow shaking hands with the Myriad Sword Sect, the City Lord and the two Vice City Lords aren't here right now. Let's take out the resources for the two young geniuses. Black Tortoise Sovereign, what do you think? The White Tiger Supremacy and the Ancestral Phoenix Supremacy supported Night Sorrow and the Myriad Sword Sect respectively. They would definitely agree to immediately distribute the resources to the two of them. Therefore, the Ancestral Dragon Supremacy asked for the Black Tortoise Supremacy's opinion. The four of them had the highest status in the God Realm city. The other one with a slightly higher status was the Horn Clan's sovereign. He was proficient in divination and could often use his special ability to help the God Realm's territory avert danger. He was a very special existence. Even the matter of Night Sorrow becoming the Destiny's child was divined by him. But normally, the Horn Clan's sovereign didn't like to speak. Today, he said some words because he was a little excited about Night Sorrow's arrival. There's still 100 years until the War of Providence. This time, if the God Realm can't enter the top 1,000, the Providence won't be able to hold on. You two young geniuses must quickly increase your strength. There's no problem with giving you the resources, but you must understand one thing. That is, you're the hope of the entire God Realm. Sovereign Black Tortoise didn't answer Ancestral Sovereign Ancestor Dragon directly. Instead, he looked at Night Sorrow and Myriad Sword Sect and said, but before I give you the resources, I have a question to ask. How many years have the two of you cultivated separately? Sword Sect. It's been 2 eras. After Sovereign Black Tortoise asked, Myriad Sword Sect immediately replied. Then, he looked at Night Sorrow like everyone else. Myriad Sword Sect cultivated for 2 eras to reach their current level. Their cultivation speed was even faster than some of the Supremes present. Logically speaking, there should be people talking. But at this moment, everyone's attention was on Night Sorrow. Obviously, in their hearts, Night Sorrow was the most important existence. Seeing everyone's attention on him, Night Sorrow thought for a moment and said, less than an era. In reality, he had cultivated for less than 10,000 years in the real world. This was considered to be leaving some face for Myriad Sword Sect. How long exactly? Cultivating to the Divine King realm with one opportunity isn't slow, but it's not that amazing. There aren't many such geniuses in the God realm, but there are countless of them in other realms. When Sovereign Black Tortoise heard Night Sorrow's words, he immediately asked for the exact time. He felt that the other party was being a little careless. Not counting the cultivation in the spatial artifact, it should be around 3,000 to 4,000 years. Night Sorrow didn't pay much attention. Night Sorrow told the truth. He only gave a rough estimate based on his impression and didn't calculate it accurately. What? Cultivating for 3,000 to 4,000 years in the lower realm, and you've reached your current level? Amazing, really amazing. In time, even the Eternal Supreme Realm will spread your name. The Black Tortoise Supremacy, who had originally had a grave expression on his face, smiled when he heard Yishang's answer. Then, he said, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and take out those resources and give them to them. According to Night Sorrow's cultivation time, 100 years isn't a short time for him. He can definitely make good use of it. In the battle for Providence 100 years later, we still need him to take the lead. We must spare no effort to provide resources. That's right. When Sovereign Ancestral Dragon heard Night Sorrow's cultivation time, he was also pleasantly surprised. He knew that as long as the God realm passed through the current crisis of Providence, it wouldn't be too difficult to continue for thousands or tens of thousands of years. As long as Night Sorrow was given a few tens of thousands of years, he might be able to become a supreme. With his talent, he might even surpass the City Lord of the God realm. Here are the resources that both of you deserve. Keep them well. Sovereign Ancestral Dragon, Sovereign Black Tortoise, Sovereign Ancestral Phoenix, and Sovereign White Tiger took out the resources and divided them into 2 equal portions, giving one each to Night Sorrow and Myriad Sword Sect. When they handed the items to Night Sorrow, Sovereign White Tiger patted Night Sorrow's shoulder and said, later, I will instruct my subordinates to prepare a house for you in the City Lord's mansion. You can rule the City Lord's mansion on normal days. If you have any questions about cultivation, you can ask us at any time. Every year, we will gather in the City Lord's mansion. Thank you, Sovereign White Tiger. Chapter 2873. Ha! Night Sorrow, if you want to understand the situation of the Eternal Supremes, you don't need to read those books. The White Tiger Sovereign smiled when he heard Yishang, and then he looked at the Myriad Sword Sect and said, Sword Sect, show Yishang around and familiarize him with the cities of the God world. Moreover, explain the specific situation of the Eternal Supreme Dimension to him. Yes. Lord Supreme. In front of everyone, Myriad Sword Sect did not address the White Tiger Sovereign as uncle. He then looked at Night Sorrow and said, Brother Yi, if you don't mind, you can walk around the city with me. Brother Wan, what are you saying? Let's go. Night Sorrow bid farewell to the Supremes, then followed the 10,000 Sword Sect out of the City Lord's mansion. As soon as they walked out of the mansion, Night Sorrow asked, Brother Wan, other than the Celestial Realm, what else is there in the Celestial Realm? Although the situation is grim, there shouldn't be only one city left, right? Ha, that's not the case. Myriad Sword Sect shook his head. The Celestial Realm has its own territory, just like the other territories. Other than the Celestial Realm, there are tens of millions of miles of jurisdiction. The place we are in is a safe zone, while most of the other areas are filled with danger. Outside the safe zone, there are many sovereigns and supremes fighting. The sovereigns and supremes who are fighting are rotated. Aren't there people from other territories attacking the Celestial Realm? Night Sorrow asked as they walked on the empty streets of the celestial realm. He had heard about the celestial realm situation from the ancestral phoenix, but he did not know much about it. There are people from other realms attacking. They are a great threat, but as long as the destiny of the celestial realm is not destroyed, it will be protected by the Eternal Supremes. Although they will attack the safe zone and suffer divine punishment, they won't really destroy the celestial realm. At this point, the 10,000 Swords sect sighed and continued, but if that sliver of fortune in our territory is destroyed, the surrounding territories will definitely destroy our territory and invade the God realm behind us. As for the ones attacking the God realm's safe zone, it's not just the people from other territories, but also the natives of the Eternal Supreme Realm. They don't have much intelligence, but they are extremely powerful. Without the strength of a sovereign, it's impossible to deal with them. So that's how it is. It seems like we really need to do our best to plunder the celestial realm's providence in 100 years. Night Sorrow had originally thought that luck was a mysterious thing, but now that it involved the protection of the Eternal Supreme World, he immediately realized the seriousness of the matter and took it seriously. Night Sorrow then asked curiously, "Brother Juan, where did you grow up? Was it also the God realm? But I don't think I've heard anything about you in the God realm." The Supreme Beings were basically all great figures from 3,000 reincarnations ago. Those were all things that happened in the distant past, so it was normal that they hadn't heard of them. However, the 10,000 Swords sect had personally said that he had risen to power in the last 2 eras, which made Night Sorrow very curious. I was born in the deity realm, but I've been cultivating in the Eternal Supreme Realm. The 10,000 Swords sect smiled and explained, at that time, there were a total of 300 genius seedlings who were brought from the God realm to the Eternal Supreme Realm by the ancestor Phoenix Supreme. After arriving at the Eternal Supreme Realm, we have been cultivating in the God realm until we reached the sovereign level. Only then could we come out. I'm the 11th to reach the sovereign level. Now, there are a total of 19 people who have reached the sovereign level. However, in the battle outside the safe zone, 12 of us have fallen. Only 7 of us are left. So that's how it is. It seems that the Supreme Beings have really put in a lot of effort for the God Realm's territory. You genius seedlings really don't have it easy. Cultivating in seclusion all the time, if one's mind is weak, I'm afraid he won't be able to persevere. Night Sorrow sighed. If he had been forced to cultivate in a secluded area all the time, he would probably have gone crazy from the stifling. It's a little depressing, yes. But our achievements are much greater than staying in the God realm. If we hadn't come to the Eternal Supreme Realm, I'm afraid none of us would have reached the sovereign level in such a short time. After all, you know how difficult it is to become a sovereign in the God realm. The 10,000 Swords sect said indifferently. Obviously, he was very happy that he had been chosen. Just as he said, if the White Tiger Sovereign hadn't brought him to the Eternal Supreme Realm, with his potential, he would have achieved something in the God realm, but at most he would be a divine king. At this point, the 10,000 Swords sect said with sincere admiration, Brother Ye's potential is still the highest. It only took you a few thousand years to become a divine king in the God realm. If you had been brought to the Eternal Supreme Realm, you would have become a sovereign long ago. I'm guessing that when the Supreme Beings were choosing, I was still in the realms below the God realm. My path of growth has always been accompanied by resistance and slaughter. Night Sorrow smiled as he told his story. After listening to Night Sorrow's story from beginning to end, the 10,000 Swords sect revealed an expression of longing. He said enviously, Brother Ye's path of cultivation is brilliant and varied. In comparison, people like us still lack some experience. When I fought with you, I realized that I wasn't decisive enough in a moment of life and death. This is one of my weaknesses. After hearing about Brother Juan's experience, I can understand why you weren't decisive enough in battle. You still lack the baptism of life and death battles. It was only now that Night Sorrow understood that the 10,000 Swords sect and the others were sovereigns who had been force-fed. Their actual combat experience was pitifully low. Otherwise, they wouldn't have made such a low-level mistake in battle. After thinking for a moment, Night Sorrow continued, if it's possible, can we go to the border of the safe zone to train? Of course we can. Most of the resources we normally obtain are from the savage sovereigns outside the safe zone, the 10,000 Swords sect said. Master 10,000 Swords sighed. But we only have 100 years before we have to participate in the War of Providence. Using 100 years to absorb the precepts of those invincible sovereigns would be very difficult. That's true. After we familiarize ourselves with the God Realm cities, we should immediately start cultivating. If possible, even if we can't absorb all of it, we should set aside 30 years for battle. What do you think? Knight Sorrow looked at the 10,000 Swords sect and made an agreement. Without absorbing the natural laws and essence of the invincible sovereigns, it was impossible to directly fight. All right. There's no time to lose. Let's immediately return to our base and cultivate. In the eternal supreme world, the natural laws of time are extremely stable. Even the City Lord's mansion only has a spatial paradise that accelerates time by 3 times. Thus, 100 years here can at most be 300 years. Let's make good use of this opportunity and increase our strength as much as possible. After making an agreement with Knight Sorrow, the 10,000 Swords sect explained a few other things about the eternal supreme world to him before sending him back to the City Lord's mansion. Then, they returned to the tavern where the others were. Chapter 2874. When the people in the restaurant heard the Myriad Swords sect mention Knight Sorrow, their faces were filled with disbelief. After all, they had clearly seen Knight Sorrow's cultivation. It was only at the level of the Divine King. That was something that couldn't be faked. Perhaps he really can help us get out of this predicament. The Myriad Swords sect took a sip of cold wine and sighed. When he thought of everything that had happened to Knight Sorrow, he felt somewhat defeated. He was already an intermediate dominator, but he had been defeated by Knight Sorrow, a lesser Divine King. There was no way he would be able to contend against him in the future. When the other sovereigns heard the Myriad Swords sect's words, they also realized that Knight Sorrow was different from the rest. They began to discuss matters outside the safe zone, as well as the future prospects of the heavenly realm. As for Knight Sorrow, after returning to the City Lord's manor, he sought out the Ancestor Phoenix, as well as Jing Yun and Wu Lingfei. Knight Sorrow immediately gave them a portion of the unrivaled Dominator's laws and essence he had obtained. However, Jing Yun and Wu Lingfei knew what this meant, so they didn't accept Knight Sorrow's gift. Knight Sorrow, if you're thinking about them, hurry up and increase your strength. Go outside the safe zone and hunt down the Dominator-level desolate beasts. Bring back the laws and essence they contain. That's the most common way to increase one's strength in the Eternal Supreme Realm. Seeing that Knight Sorrow was about to give up the unrivaled Dominator's laws and essence, the Ancestor Phoenix's expression became somewhat unnatural. He reminded Knight Sorrow of this. Knight Sorrow knew what the Ancestor Phoenix meant. He nodded and said, Knight Sorrow will cultivate as quickly as possible and try to increase my strength a bit more. Then, I'll head outside the safe zone to hunt down desolate beasts. In his conversation with the Myriad Swords sect, Knight Sorrow had already learned that desolate beasts were native to the Eternal Supreme Realm. Like the natives, they were extremely powerful and bloodthirsty. However, most of them lived alone, so they were easier to deal with than the primitive tribes. Knight Sorrow. I know that you are responsible and you want to obtain cultivation resources for your family and friends who don't have the means to obtain resources. However, you must remember that the Eternal Supreme Realm's danger is incomparable to the Heavenly Realm. The living beings here were mostly at the Sovereign Realm or the Supreme Realm. There were even some immature young beasts that were at the Divine King Realm. Therefore, it's extremely dangerous to go hunting. Ancestor Phoenix described the dangers of eternal supremacy to Knight Sorrow, then said, as the saying goes, the son of 1,000 gold coins can't just sit and wait. Right now, you are the hope of the entire God realm. You must take care of yourself. The Eternal Supreme World's natural laws, space, and time were all extremely stable. At the same time, it contained a large number of natural treasures. However, it did not contain much divine essence. If one wanted to increase their strength quickly, they could first obtain resources from desolate beasts. Secondly, they could search for natural treasures. Ancestor Phoenix knew that Yi Shang would not watch his family's strength stagnate. Therefore, he would definitely leave the safe zone and hunt in the dangerous areas of the celestial realm. Lord Supreme Martial Artist, Yi Shang will remember your words. But there are things that men can and cannot do. Yi Shang must first support his own small family before he can support a large family like the God Realm. Hearing Knight Sorrow's words, although Jing Yun and Wu Lingfei did not want him to take the risk, they were still very touched. The most important thing for a man was to be able to shoulder the responsibility on his shoulders. Knight Sorrow was obviously such a person. He would not let anyone around him down. Knight Sorrow did not pay attention to the expressions of the two women. He cupped his fists towards the Ancestor Phoenix and asked, Lord Supreme, I heard from Brother One that there is a 3 times acceleration space in the City Lord's mansion. Knight Sorrow wants to cultivate in it. I wonder if that's possible. 3 times acceleration space is one of the most precious treasures of the City Lord's mansion. If ordinary people want to use it, they have to pay eternal crystals. But you are everyone's hope, so you don't have to pay. Wait here, I will help you apply for the qualifications to enter. After Supreme Phoenix said this, he turned around and left to discuss Knight Sorrow's use of the accelerated space with the other Supremes. At this time, Jing Yun said, Husband, in fact, you don't need to think so much about us. Lord Supreme just told us that if we pass the assessment, we can join the Heavenly Realm's genius base to cultivate. As long as we join, we can obtain unlimited resources until we reach the Sovereign Realm. That's right, Knight Sorrow. You don't need to spend too much energy on us. After all, you have enough responsibilities. Wu Lingfei also said, although the two of us are not as talented as you, it shouldn't be a problem for us to enter the genius base. You don't need to worry too much. But I've heard that unless one cultivates to the Sovereign Realm, it's impossible to leave that place. I can't bear to let you lose your freedom. When the two said this, Knight Sorrow understood that they were preparing to enter the genius base that nurtured the Myriad Sword sect. Recalling some of the words of the Myriad Sword sect, Knight Sorrow felt that although he could improve his strength there were too many restrictions. His family didn't need to be trapped there. If they wanted resources, he could go and obtain them. Seeing that Knight Sorrow didn't quite agree, Jing Yun was a little unhappy. Husband, Aunt Fei, and I have our own ideas. We don't want to be a burden to you. Can you understand this? You always carry all the responsibilities on your shoulders. It's too tiring. Yes. Knight Sorrow, we don't want you to work too hard. Moreover, you're busy increasing your strength. Even if you obtain resources, it's best if you use them yourself. Giving them to us is a waste of resources. If we use the resources you snatch to increase our strength, our mentality will be unstable. Wu Lingfei also explained. She and Jing Yun didn't want to take up precious time. All right. I won't force you on this matter. If you want to, you can try it with Fire Phoenix King and the others. Yi Shang thought for a moment, and indeed understood the two women's mentality. If it were him, he would probably make the same choice. After Supreme Ancestor Phoenix returned, Knight Sorrow told him about Jing Yun and Wu Lingfei's choice. Hearing this, Supreme Ancestor Phoenix immediately had a whole new level of respect for Jing Yun and Wu Lingfei. He nodded approvingly and said, Knight Sorrow, go and cultivate well. I will take good care of them and Fire Phoenix King and the others. Let them enter the genius base successfully. Good. Supreme Ancestor Phoenix, Knight Sorrow will quickly increase my strength and strive to reach the Sovereign Realm as soon as possible. After settling the matter of Jing Yun and Wu Lingfei, Knight Sorrow finally had the mood to enter the City Lord's residence's cultivation space. He cultivated without any distracting thoughts. Chapter 2875. The laws and essence of these invincible sovereigns were thousands of times stronger than sovereign moxies. This was the first time he'd ever seen such pure energy. It was far superior to God veins. It was a supreme cultivation treasure. Although he wasn't sure what level he'd reach if he absorbed all of these resources, Knight Sorrow was confident that he'd be able to reach the intermediate Divine King level at the very least. Furthermore, this breakthrough was similar to breaking through to the sovereign realm. It would be a huge improvement. The wills contained within these laws and essences have already been removed by the autarchs. I can just absorb them directly. It seems like I won't need 70 years in the real world. After settling his emotions, Knight Sorrow found a quiet room and set up a formation. Then, he began to peacefully absorb the laws and essences of these invincible sovereigns. He sat there for 120 years. On the 120th year, Knight Sorrow suddenly opened his eyes. He'd successfully broken through to the intermediate Divine King level and was about to face his tribulation. After overcoming the tribulation, Knight Sorrow once more began to absorb the resources in front of him. At this point, only a third of the laws and essences of the invincible races remained. Knight Sorrow used 30 years to absorb them all. This time, however, he didn't experience any increase in cultivation level. Roughly 50 years had passed in the outside world. As soon as Knight Sorrow emerged from seclusion, he immediately contacted Ancestor Phoenix and asked about Jing Yun, Wu Lingfei, and the others. He learned that they'd already entered the Genius Base and couldn't be seen for the time being. Knight Sorrow went straight to the Myriad Sword Sect. When he arrived, he found that the Myriad Sword Sect was still in seclusion. 3 sovereigns were standing guard for him. When they saw Knight Sorrow, the 3 sovereigns' eyes lit up. "Are you the child of destiny, Knight Sorrow?" "This one is indeed Knight Sorrow, but I don't deserve the title of Child of Destiny." Knight Sorrow could sense that they didn't have any ill intentions. He immediately responded, then asked, "How should I address you? Are you all Brother Wan's friends?" We all cultivated together in the Genius Base. My name is Shui Chang Tian, this is Yuan Feng Shui, he is Murong Zhenlu." The sovereign with a long sword on his back introduced the only female cultivator present and the other sovereign with a folding fan to Knight Sorrow with a smile on his face. "Nice to meet you, nice to meet you." After Shui Chang Tian introduced him, Murong Zizhen, who was holding a folding fan, immediately bowed to Yishang. He was dressed in a white robe and didn't look like a cultivator. Instead, he looked more like a graceful scholar. The female cultivator, Yuan Fengshui, was dressed in a red robe. She didn't have any weapons in her hands. She also greeted Knight Sorrow with a smile. The 3 of them were in awe of the Myriad Sword Sect. After hearing about Knight Sorrow from him, he immediately felt admiration for him. He completely retracted his previous thoughts of looking down on the Divine King. "Everyone, how long will it take for Brother Wan to come out of seclusion?" Knight Sorrow exchanged pleasantries with the 3, then asked about the Myriad Sword Sect's situation. His strength had risen to the level of the mid-level Divine King. He wanted to immediately head out of the safe zone and test his strength. He also wanted to find some suitable materials to forge a divine weapon similar to the Samsara halberd. After all, he'd always used the spear as his weapon. It was a good weapon. At the same time, he wanted to forge a suitable bow. When he used the Tianyun bow, Knight Sorrow discovered that the combination of a bow and a spear, one long-range and one close-range divine weapons, was quite suitable. Brother Wan shouldn't be able to absorb all the resources in a short period of time. He told us to call him out in 60 years. 50 years have already passed, so there are still 10 years left. Shui Chang Tian explained to Knight Sorrow. "The 3 of you have been guarding this place for 50 years. Knight Sorrow was surprised to hear Shui Chang Tian's words. He felt that there shouldn't be any danger in the God realm. There shouldn't be a need for 3 people to guard this place. Brother Yi, you've been cultivating in the City Lord's manor, so you don't know the dangers outside. As the saying goes, all the hustle and bustle of the world is for profit. The news of Brother Wan obtaining the law of invincible sovereign has already spread through the city. It's inevitable that he'll be targeted by some people with bad intentions. Although the territories of the divine realm appear to be harmonious, there are still some dark sides in the dark. Shui Chang Tian patiently explained to Night Sorrow. He also told Night Sorrow that although some cultivators in the God realm didn't dare to act against their own people on the surface, there were many who would do such things behind the scenes. Some people would immediately turn hostile for resources. So there are people like this. It seems that the most unpredictable thing is the human heart. When Night Sorrow heard this, he immediately began to worry about Jing Yun and Wu Lingfei's situation. He looked at Yuan Fengxue. Senior Sister Yuan, is it convenient for female cultivators to cultivate in the genius base? You have a female friend who has entered the genius base to cultivate. Yuan Fengxue, who had been somewhat absent-minded, immediately locked her gaze on Night Sorrow's face. Yes. My wife, another family member, and 3 other friends have entered the genius base. Night Sorrow spoke truthfully. With the help of Ancestor Phoenix, Jing Yun, Wu Lingfei, Fire Phoenix Monarch, and Dragon Sparrow Monarch had all entered the genius base to cultivate. What kind of strength do they have? Can they sweep through the ranks of the Divine King? Yuan Fengxue didn't mention the rules of the genius base. Instead, she asked about Jing Yun and the others' strength. It's impossible for them to sweep through the ranks of the Divine King. However, although 2 of my family members are lower Divine Kings, their talents are quite good. They're close to Ancestor Phoenixes. As for the other 3 friends, they have the strength of High God Kings. Yi Shang didn't hide anything when he talked about the strength of Jing Yun and the others. In the genius base, it's not necessarily a good thing for a woman to have good talent. Yuan Fengxue sighed and said, because those who enter the genius base can't leave until they reach the ruler level. Some people have stayed there for too long and can't see any hope of reaching the ruler level. Over time, their mentality will become unbalanced. You're saying that my 2 family members might be targeted by some people? Although Yuan Fengxue's words were very reserved, Night Sorrow could understand the meaning behind them and asked excitedly. Yes. Some people can't break through to the ruler level, so they'll think of evil ways, such as dual cultivating with talented women. Yuan Fengxue frowned. Back in the genius base, she had been taken care of by the Myriad Sword sect. That was why she hadn't been taken over by evil cultivators. Won't the Supremes ask about these things? Night Sorrow, who was worried about Jing Yun and Wu Lingfei, asked unhappily. The genius base has its own rules. After entering, you have to rely on yourself. The Supremes can't act as they please. Yuan Fengxue explained on behalf of the Supremes. In truth, the number of geniuses in the God realm is already extremely low. If there wasn't a catfish effect, many people in the genius base would slack off. What she said made sense, but Night Sorrow didn't feel good when he heard it. He cupped his fists at the 3 and said, you guys continue to protect Brother Wan. I'll go take a look at the genius base and return soon. Chapter 2876. Alright. Brother Yi, if you need anything, just let us know. After all, we came from the genius base, so we can more or less help. Shui Changtian looked at Night Sorrow and said solemnly. He knew that it wasn't easy for women to survive in the genius base. Murong Zhenlu also made the same promise. As for Yuan Fengxue, he handed over a sound transmission stone and said, Brother Yi, if it's urgent, you can crush the sound transmission stone. I'll wake Brother Wan up and we'll go together. Thank you, everyone. Night Sorrow will remember this favor. Night Sorrow cupped his fists and remembered their favor. At the same time, he went to the City Lord's mansion to look for Supreme Ancestor Phoenix, who hadn't left yet. At this time, the other Supremes had basically gone to the safe zone to fight. Supreme Ancestor Phoenix had to deal with some matters in the city, so he stayed behind. Night Sorrow came to the genius base with Supreme Ancestor Phoenix. He realized that the environment here wasn't bad. It was a huge mountain range with verdant hills and clear waters. It didn't look much different from an ordinary sect. However, the entire mountain range was covered by a huge formation, so it wasn't easy for the people inside to come out. Some of the geniuses inside would feel a huge psychological pressure. Actually, the children inside are all pitiful people. However, if you want to wear a crown, you have to bear its weight. If you want to be above others, how can you do it without paying a price? Supreme Ancestor Phoenix explained to Knight Sorrow when he brought him into the genius base. Then, he continued, actually, the price they paid isn't much at all. The resources they used were exchanged with the lives of other sovereigns and supremes. In order to nurture them, our Divine Realm territory has already sacrificed several sovereigns. It's all to help them obtain enough sovereigns' laws and essence. Supreme Ancestor, are you saying that the resources these geniuses need are obtained from the sovereigns of the Divine Realm territory in the hunting zone? Why don't we send out Supremes to obtain them? Knight Sorrow asked doubtfully. The Eternal Supreme World has its own laws. If Supremes go to kill sovereigns, they'll exhaust their luck. If that wasn't the case, our Divine Realm territory's luck wouldn't be so severely depleted. Supremacy Ancestral Phoenix sighed. In the past, they had dispatched supreme beings to the hunting zone to kill wild beasts. Now, it seemed like they were killing the goose that laid the golden eggs. Lord Supreme, don't worry. Knight Sorrow will go back to hunt desolate beasts in the near future and strive for a great harvest. When the time comes, I'll gift it all to the genius base for free. Knight Sorrow had already advanced to become a mid-level divine king. He was basically capable of contending against ordinary high-level sovereigns. Coupled with the Myriad Sword sect and the others, they should be able to reap a decent harvest. Ha! You don't have to do it for free. Although the Supremes of the deity realm are unable to kill the desolate beast personally, they have already received the corresponding rewards. As long as you can kill a desolate beast, you can come to the genius base's treasury to exchange for the corresponding resources. Sovereigns kill desolate beasts with their lives on the line. If there isn't some sort of reward, it wouldn't make sense. Supreme Phoenix Ancestor began to explain the rewards of the Divine World's territories. Typically, as long as dominators killed desolate beasts, they would be able to exchange for the corresponding resources. The resources they could exchange for included manuals, materials, insights, pills, etc. It was enough to support a cultivator to reach the utmost exalt level. These resources belonged to the Supremes, especially the City Lord and the 2 Vice City Lords. Currently, the 2 Vice City Lords were in the process of searching for the City Lord and had been snatching resources from all sorts of dangerous places. Their goal was to help the geniuses of the deity realm and accumulate some rewards. Alright. Knight Sorrow will remember Lord Supreme's words. After hearing Supreme Phoenix Ancestor's words, Knight Sorrow had a certain idea of how to increase his strength in the future. In the future, when he was outside the safe zone and confirmed whether he could obtain the power of virtue, he could also use the resources he obtained to exchange for the materials and cultivation resources he needed. This was something that the Myriad Sword sect and the others hadn't mentioned. We're here. Just as Knight Sorrow was thinking about his future path, Supreme Phoenix Ancestor suddenly reminded him that they had arrived at the core of the Genius Base. The Genius Base was currently very lively. Because there were people fighting on the challenge stage, there were many spectators. These Divine King Sovereigns were too engrossed in watching and didn't even notice Supreme Phoenix Ancestor's arrival. What? It's Aunt Faye. When Knight Sorrow saw clearly who was participating in the battle, his heart jumped to his throat. If it were him, he wouldn't be nervous at all no matter what kind of opponent he faced. But it was completely different when it was Wu Lingfei. Wu Lingfei still had the strength of a lower divine king, but her realm had stabilized a lot. Her opponent was an upper divine king with a cold and arrogant expression. In terms of realm, her opponent clearly had the advantage, but Wu Lingfei's bloodline talent was stronger, and she didn't fall into a disadvantage in the battle. Knight Sorrow saw the situation in front of him and let out a sigh of relief. He began to search for Jing Yun in the crowd. Soon, he saw Jing Yun at the edge of the stage with a worried expression. At that moment, Jing Yun was clearly injured. She didn't seem to be in a good condition. Knight Sorrow hurried to her side and asked, Jing Yun, what's going on? Why are you also injured when Aunt Faye is fighting on the stage? Husband. You're here. Seeing Night Sorrow suddenly arrive, a look of pleasant surprise appeared on Jing Yun's face. Night Sorrow held Jing Yun's hand and asked again, "What's going on?" "Husband, don't worry. For decades, Aunt Fei and I have often challenged each other." Seeing Night Sorrow's worry, Jing Yun immediately recounted her experiences in the past few decades. When the two of them first arrived, they were immediately coveted by some cultivators because of their stunning beauty and relatively low realm. But after a few battles, they gradually made a name for themselves. And with the help of Fire Phoenix King, Dragon Sparrow King, and others, they gradually formed a relatively strong group and quickly gained a foothold in the genius base. Although the stakes of the current battle weren't small, what was bet was resources. There was no harm to the two women themselves. So that's how it is. Then your husband is relieved. Jing Yun and Wu Lingfei gained a foothold in the genius base where competition was fierce. Night Sorrow suddenly felt that he had suppressed their radiance. Usually, in front of him, whether it was Jing Yun or Wu Lingfei, their radiance was overshadowed. Now that they had their own circumstances, the two of them immediately began to write their own stories. "Husband, don't worry. Aunt Fei and I will take good care of ourselves." Night Sorrow's arrival made Jing Yun extremely happy. She unconsciously hugged his arm. And at this time, the battle between Wu Lingfei and her opponent had already reached its climax. Chapter 2877. Clearly, the two were preparing for a decisive battle. Wu Lingfei, who had transformed into an ice phoenix, released a cold divine domain that made everyone present feel a strong chill. Even some of the spectating divine king couldn't recognize her and started trembling. Right now, she wasn't just an ice phoenix, she had the aura of an ice empress. Icebound world. Wu Lingfei, who had turned into an ice phoenix, raised her head and roared, using a bloodline technique that she had recently comprehended. In an instant, the world on the stage was completely frozen. You're clearly of the phoenix race, but the ice element is even more terrifying than the fire element. You're really hard to deal with. I've lost. On the stage, Wu Lingfei's opponent, Chen Haiming, was an upper-level divine king and ranked in the top 30 of Genius Base. However, in the face of Wu Lingfei's icebound world, although he tried his best to resist, he was still frozen. After being frozen, he unwillingly transmitted his voice to Wu Lingfei, indicating that he admitted defeat. He was afraid that Wu Lingfei would continue attacking and destroy his divine weapon. You've lost. Then can you hand over the thing you promised me? After winning, Wu Lingfei returned to her human form and the newly refined ice illusion armor immediately wrapped around her, giving her the aura of an ice empress. This is a reincarnation-type divine metal. Take it. Chen Haiming unwillingly took out a piece of metal that emitted a cold light from his grotto heaven and said, "Do you dare to fight with Nanxian Moli? If you win, I'll give you 10 times more of this divine metal. If you lose, dual cultivate with Nanxian Moli." Nanxian Moli. Hearing this name, everyone present began to discuss. Nanxian Moli was currently one of the top 5 experts in Genius Base. In terms of strength, he wasn't inferior to an ordinary ruler. He just hadn't advanced. If I give you 10 times more, the materials I win will be enough for Night Sorrow to forge a new Samsara halberd. Wu Lingfei also heard of Nanxian Moli and knew that he wasn't easy to deal with. However, she really wanted to help Night Sorrow win the materials. Sister Lingfei, don't agree. Although the materials are precious, they can't be compared to yours. Jing Yun saw Wu Lingfei's hesitant expression and immediately tried to persuade her. Back in the God world, Jing Yun and the rest of the Yi family had called Wu Ling Imperial Concubine Fei. But in the Eternal Supreme world, they had come into contact with her a lot, and felt that calling her aunt was too awkward. So, they changed it to Big Sister Imperial Concubine Ling. In reality, Jing Yun was much older than Wu Lingfei. However, like the other daughters-in-law of the Yi family, she subconsciously felt that Wu Lingfei was an elder. Thus, she didn't call her younger sister, but elder sister. But as long as we win this round, the materials we have accumulated for Night Sorrow will be enough for him to forge a new Samsara halberd. Wu Lingfei turned to look at Jing Yun. Only then did she realize that Night Sorrow was here. The moment she saw Night Sorrow, Wu Lingfei was like a child who had done something wrong. She turned her head away in embarrassment. Let me do it. I will fight them. We've clearly set up a trap and are waiting for you to jump in. If nothing unexpected happens, that Nanxian Mo Li's strength definitely surpasses yours by a lot. Looking at Wu Lingfei, Night Sorrow once again felt a sense of gratitude rise in his heart. Wu Lingfei was no different from a close relative to him. He immediately transmitted his voice to Wu Lingfei. I know that Nanxian Mo Li is definitely stronger than me. However, those materials with the Samsara attribute can only be found by chance. Wu Lingfei sighed and said, if you hadn't come, I would definitely have agreed. However, since you're here, you will fight. She spoke to Night Sorrow before looking at the defeated Chen Haiming and said, I can agree to your bet, but let one of my friends fight. What do you think? After all, I just used my bloodline power and won't be able to recover in a short period of time. Do you want your friend to fight instead? Hearing this, Chen Haiming was silent for a moment before saying, sure. We agree. He was silent for a moment because he was communicating with Nanxian Mo Li. The two of them were relatively clear about the alliance between Wu Lingfei and Jing Yun. They knew that the strongest among them was Huo Huang. Huo Huang's strength ranked in the top 20 of Genius Base and even had the possibility of reaching the top 10. However, Nanxian Mo Li was confident of defeating Huo Huang. All right. Since you've agreed to this bet, let Nanxian Mo Li fight. My friend is already here. Wu Lingfei not only understood Night Sorrow's strength, she also had a deep-rooted trust in him. She felt that as long as he was here, she would be at ease. She was very at ease and placed herself in the bet. Auntie Fei, although it's disrespectful to put you in the bet, I'm confident of winning. I'll teach them a lesson. Night Sorrow felt that using Wu Lingfei as a bet wasn't good, so he explained. At this moment, Wu Lingfei, who had flown down the stage, said, I believe in your strength and won't take the bet to heart. However, Jing Yun now calls me Sister Lingfei. If you call her Auntie Fei, it'll be a little strange. Just call me Sister Fei in the future. Ah. All right. When Night Sorrow heard Wu Lingfei's words, he was very surprised. However, after thinking for a moment, he still tried to call her, Sister Fei. Although he wasn't used to it, he still called her that. In reality, they weren't related by blood. Moreover, in the God realm, age didn't count for much. Calling her Auntie Fei was just a habit. There was nothing wrong with calling her sister. Hee. Go on stage. The enemy is already on stage. Help Sister Fei vent her anger of being schemed against. Wu Lingfei smiled sweetly. In her opinion, changing the way they addressed each other was even more difficult than the previous battle. Jing Yun, who was standing to the side, smiled and didn't say anything. She and Wu Lingfei had depended on each other for decades. Their feelings for each other were at the level of life and death. They had also whispered many things. Jing Yun knew a lot of inside information that Night Sorrow and the others didn't know. After Night Sorrow went on stage, Nanxian Mo Li, who was standing on the stage, was stunned. Puzzled, he asked, Who are you? I'm Wu Lingfei's friend. Night Sorrow replied noncommittally. In the Eternal Supreme Realm, he hadn't used the power of virtue to conceal his cultivation. Therefore, Nanxian Mo Li easily saw through Night Sorrow's cultivation. He sneered, with your cultivation as a middle divine king, you dare to fight me, Nanxian Mo Li? Aren't you overestimating yourself? Whether or not I'm overestimating myself, we'll only know after we fight. Night Sorrow remained as steady as Mount Tai. His expression was emotionless, and there wasn't any sign of fear. It looks like you still don't know what kind of person I, Nanxian Mo Li, am. Chapter 2878. The moment Nanxian Mo Li attacked, many people below the stage cried out in surprise. This was because Nanshan Mo Li's strength had clearly increased again. He was more than twice as strong as when he had appeared on the stage 20 years ago. The current him clearly had the strength to enter the top 3 of Genius Base. At this very moment, apart from Wu Lingfei and Jing Yun, no one in the audience felt that Night Sorrow, this unfamiliar face, would win. Your strength is already not bad at the Divine King's level, but you're still not qualified to fight me. Originally, Night Sorrow disdained to bully the Divine King, but Nanshan Mo Li was clearly plotting to bully Wu Lingfei. This was something he could not tolerate at all. Therefore, he was prepared to directly crush his opponent's confidence with his attack. When Nanshan Mo Li attacked with his palm, Night Sorrow also attacked with his palm, colliding with it. Long before Night Sorrow had advanced to the middle-level Divine King, he could already fight against the middle-level Sovereign Realm Myriad Sword Master and suppress him by half a head. Although Nanshan Mo Li was considered a genius disciple in Genius Base, how could he be Night Sorrow's match? Boom! After the two exchanged blows, Nanshan Mo Li was blasted off the stage. In an instant, he was defeated. Furthermore, Nanshan Mo Li, who had been blasted off the stage, crawled for a long time without getting up. Clearly, his injuries were extremely severe. On account of how hard it was for the Divine Realm to nurture you, I'll spare you this time. Otherwise, you would have already been annihilated for scheming against my family. Nanshan Mo Li was sent flying and could not get up. He looked very wretched, but this was still the result of Night Sorrow holding back. If he had used his full strength, Nanshan Mo Li would have been killed instantly. Yes. Sir. It's Nanshan Mo Li's fault. After Nanshan Mo Li realized Night Sorrow's strength, he immediately had Chen Haiming help him up and knelt on the ground to apologize. The shock that Night Sorrow's attack brought to him was practically fatal. Facing Night Sorrow was like facing a supreme being. That feeling of powerlessness made him not dare to show the slightest bit of disrespect. The reason why the God world has been able to exist for so long without being destroyed by the eternal Paragon world is because of that. They relied on the many supreme martial artists who were not afraid of sacrificing themselves. They are all people with great boldness. You should learn more from their broad-mindedness. Perhaps it will be beneficial for your future cultivation. Even if you can become a sovereign by relying on crooked methods, your accomplishments will be limited. Night Sorrow did not continue bickering with Nanshan Mo Li. Instead, he talked about the matter of his heart. Upon hearing this, Nanshan Mo Li felt as though he had been struck by lightning. Then, he kowtowed 3 times to Night Sorrow. Nanshan Mo Li thanks Benefactor for enlightening me. How should I address you, Benefactor? My name is Night Sorrow. Night Sorrow said before sending a voice transmission to Wu Lingfei and Jing Yun to leave with them. He didn't even take the bet that Nanshan Mo Li had lost. After saying that, Night Sorrow felt that if he took the bet again, he would fall too low. After Night Sorrow left with the 2 women, the crowd around the challenge stage did not disperse for a long time. Everyone was asking about Night Sorrow's origins. They wanted to know where he came from and why he could explode with such battle prowess when he was only a medium divine king. They had originally thought that the God world had no geniuses that could contend against the other territories. Now, they felt a bit more confident. Ha! Very good. Today's matter will definitely have a positive impact on the Divine King of Genius Base. Ancestor Phoenix, who hadn't left with Night Sorrow and the others, hid in the shadows and observed for a while. Then, she revealed a gratified smile. No matter what, the most important thing in cultivation was confidence. Originally, the people present had no confidence in the God world's future. Because they knew that the new genius sovereigns of the God world had all come from their side. Those who had ascended from the God world were pitifully few. Although there were many outstanding ones, there were no truly heaven-defying ones. Now that Night Sorrow had appeared, they realized that there were still geniuses in the God world. Aunt Fei. No. Sister Fei, don't do such dangerous battles in the future. It's okay to spar, but but there's no need to gamble. Knight Sorrow, who had left the challenge stage, said politely to Wu Lingfei. Then, he looked at Jing Yun and said, "Same for you. You two just take care of yourselves. I can go and obtain the resources myself." "Okay. I got it." Jing Yun smiled and pulled Knight Sorrow's arm. "I'll bring you to see the Dragon Sparrow King and the others." "Okay. I haven't seen them for decades. I miss them a little." Knight Sorrow nodded. At this time, Wu Lingfei clearly wanted to say something, but in the end, she hesitated and gave up. However, Yi Shang didn't notice this. When he was with his family, he would restrain his vigilance and get along like an ordinary person. After meeting the Dragon Sparrow King, Fire Phoenix King, and Fire Phoenix King, Knight Sorrow realized that the Fire Phoenix King's improvement was not small. Speaking of which, she should be able to be considered a half-step sovereign now. Her cultivation realm was at the Divine King's level, but she could use the laws of the sovereign realm to attack. As for the Dragon Sparrow King and Fire Phoenix King, although they couldn't be compared to the Fire Phoenix King, their improvement was not small either. Their cultivation was not low to begin with. After decades of cultivation, they had clearly taken a step closer to the half-step sovereign realm. Very good. Seeing that everyone had improved a lot, I was relieved. After leaving the Genius Base today, I'll head to the hunting area to kill wild beasts and search for resources. I heard that the Eternal Supreme Realm is full of treasures. I'll try to forge a sovereign divine weapon for each of you as soon as possible. After Jing Yun set up a banquet for everyone, Knight Sorrow took a sip of wine and told everyone about his recent plans. Before heading to the battle for Providence, he would come again. Thus, this time, he didn't plan to talk about the battle for Providence. However, when she heard Knight Sorrow say that he would leave the safe zone to hunt wild beasts, Wu Lingfei's expression changed. She said worriedly, "Knight Sorrow, what we need now is strength. We don't really need the help of divine weapons. Just take care of yourself. Don't let yourself fall into a predicament. Don't worry, Sister Fei. I know what I'm doing. Let's drink." Since Knight Sorrow had promised, he didn't repeat himself. After replying Wu Lingfei, he raised his wine cup and toasted. Then, like mortals, they began to drink without the slightest hesitation. After 3 rounds of wine and 5 dishes, even Knight Sorrow felt a little tipsy. When they returned to Jing Yun's residence, both Knight Sorrow and Jing Yun were somewhat aroused. Under the influence of alcohol, they began to spar. When he woke up the next day, Knight Sorrow sighed slightly. He didn't want to leave this gentle home. However, after a moment of silence, he climbed out of bed, said a few words to Jing Yun, and went to find the Myriad Sword sect. Chapter 2879. After spending a night with Jing Yun, he didn't even exchange pleasantries with Wu Lingfei before leaving. In truth, Knight Sorrow was very reluctant to leave. However, he carried the fate of the entire celestial realm on his shoulders. He didn't want to relax at all. Knight Sorrow's plan was that if Myriad Sword sect didn't come out of seclusion, he, Xuechang Tian, Yuan Fengxue, or Murongzhenlu would head to the edge of the safe zone. After all, he wasn't familiar with the celestial realm. It would be much more convenient to bring someone along. When Knight Sorrow arrived at Myriad Sword sect's residence, Xuechang Tian, Yuan Fengxue, and Murongzhenlu were still guarding the place. Myriad Sword sect hadn't come out of seclusion yet. After greeting the 3, Knight Sorrow looked at them and said, "The matter at Genius Base has been settled. I want to go to the hunting zone to hunt some wild beasts. I wonder if any of you are interested in going with me. All of us want to go together. However, we've already promised Brother Wan that we'll guard him. If he doesn't come out of seclusion, we can't go back on our words." Xuechang Tian said. As for the idea of calling Myriad Sword sect out in advance, it was just a thought. They wouldn't do it unless it was a crucial matter. I've thought about this problem. That's why I've prepared a formation for Brother Wan. This formation's power is equivalent to a sovereign's. Therefore, it won't be too much of an issue if one of you comes with me to the hunting zone. Hearing Xue Chang Tian's words, Yi Shang explained with a smile. In the eternal supreme world, although the heaven and earth formation diagrams couldn't display the same miraculous effects as they did in the celestial realm, some of the formations could still be improved. Night Sorrow, who had absorbed a large amount of Sovereign's laws and essence, was confident that he could set up a formation with astonishing defensive power. That's a good idea. If Brother Ye's formation is really effective, we can send one of us to go with you. It won't be a problem. Murong Zhenlu was interested when he heard Night Sorrow's words. Although Yuan Fengxue didn't plan on leaving early, he also looked at Night Sorrow and said, I wonder if Brother Yi has the materials to set up a Dominator-ranked defensive array? I don't have a lot of materials on hand, but I can barely set up a simple formation. Night Sorrow replied truthfully. He did not have many materials on hand, but it was not a problem for him to set up a formation. These were the laws and essences that the autarchs had bestowed upon the invincible sovereigns. G0N, then, Brother Yi, please broaden our horizons. As for the materials, we'll share them among ourselves. In the future, the three of us and Brother Wan will return them to Brother Yi. Xue Chang Tian said embarrassedly. At this moment, they were indeed a little poor. After all, in the divine world, the main way to obtain resources was to fight in the hunting zone. The three of them had always been with the other two, advancing and retreating in unison with the Myriad Swords sect. Everything was done with the Myriad Swords sect in mind. Most of the resources that the 10,000 Swords sect obtained from the territories of the God realm. Ha! Brother Xue is treating me like an outsider by saying this. It's just some materials, no need to mention them. Night Sorrow said casually, then began to set up a formation. After about 4 hours, an offensive formation that was based on the great killing formation of heaven and earth was set up. This formation will automatically counterattack when attacked. However, this is only the first part, there's still the defensive part. After setting up the offensive formation, Night Sorrow said, then spent another 4 hours setting up a defensive formation. Once the defensive formation was set up, the Myriad Swords sect's residence was completely integrated. Moreover, from outside, it was impossible to see what was going on inside. Wonderful. Truly wonderful. Murong Guizhao, who had left the residence to observe the situation outside, was full of praise for Night Sorrow's formation. In the divine world, most people would be extremely cautious when making a move. Now that they had an offensive and defensive formation, no one would dare to bump into the muzzle of a gun. Xue Changtian and Yuan Fengxue also nodded, indicating that with this formation, even if several people went to the hunting zone, no one would dare to make a move against the Myriad Swords sect. Although they said so, the two of them were obviously not going to leave. In the end, it was decided that Murong Guizhao would go with Night Sorrow. Brother Yi, although the hunting zone doesn't sound like much, it's extremely dangerous to go out and hunt. Murong Guizhao explained carefully as they left the Myriad Swords sect's residence and rushed to the edge of the safe zone. Firstly, the wild beasts are very strong. Ordinary cultivators of the same level are no match for wild beasts. Secondly, there are some primitive tribes in the hunting zone. They are very hostile towards us. When they see us, they will send out a large number of people to surround and kill us. Also, because of the terrain of the divine world, there are often cultivators from other realms who sneak into the hunting zone. The most important thing was that in the hunting area, there were many ruins, traps, and formations left behind from ancient times. These were all very dangerous. We must be careful. All right. We will try our best to be careful. I have a certain understanding of formations. It will be of some help to this trip. Night Sorrow said slowly. He was very cautious about this trip. He knew that the cruelty of the outside world was much worse than what Murong Guizhao had said. After all, they might encounter a supreme-level wild beast or a tribe's expert. Furthermore, most heaven and earth treasures would be accompanied by danger. Brother Yi, I heard that you have only cultivated for a few thousand years. Is that true? Murong Guizhao asked curiously as they continued on their way. He had heard about it from the Myriad Swords sect, but he felt that it was a bit exaggerated. After all, everyone including him had cultivated for at least 2 or 3 eras. Some had even cultivated for many reincarnations. It's true. However, I have a time artifact with 100 times effect in the lower realm. If I include that time, a few thousand years is definitely not enough. Yi Sheng replied honestly. He had never calculated the time he had spent cultivating because he did not care about fame and reputation. That's too admirable. Speaking of time artifacts, our divine world territory only has 3 times the effect. It is too far away from the powerful territories. Moreover, we do not have enough resources to support everyone's cultivation. This is also one of the reasons why our divine world territory is getting weaker and weaker. Ordinary territories will have 10 times or even 20 times the effect of time artifacts. Murong Guizhao sighed at the mention of time artifacts. For the divine world, time was not very valuable. However, for the eternal supreme world, this was not the case. Most of the time, time artifacts and cultivation resources represented everything. Chapter 2880. If I can get some time attribute materials, I might be able to refine a better spatial artifact when I reach the Dominator level. Although the time and space laws in the eternal supreme world were much more stable than the God realm, Knight Sorrow felt that he might be able to refine a better spatial artifact after reaching the Dominator level. Murong Jinlu sighed, I'm afraid it won't be easy to do that. After all, the City Lord is a brilliant supreme being, but he can only refine a spatial artifact with 3 times the time. The chances of him being able to refine something better are still a little slim. Where there's a will, there's a way. Knight Sorrow smiled and continued, oh right, Jinlu, according to what you said, supreme beings can't hunt Dominator-level wild beasts in the hunting zone, so what do they do on a daily basis? Why do I feel that they're all very busy? They don't look like they have nothing to do. Them. It's even harder than the Dominators. Murong Jinlu shook his head, if supreme beings want normal resources, they have to go to the supreme space. That's the battlefield of supreme beings. Moreover, there's no such thing as a territory. Supreme beings who enter will not only encounter powerful wild beasts, but also supreme beings from other realms. Every battle is very tragic. The City Lord went missing when he was exploring a ruin in the supreme space. He said it vaguely, but it was still possible to feel that the City Lord might have fallen in that ruin. Hearing this, Yi Sheng nodded and didn't say anything else. However, a strong desire to do battle rose in his heart. He definitely didn't have the right to enter the sovereign realm at the moment. Therefore, he had to hurry and obtain resources in the sovereign realm's hunting zone so that he could reach the sovereign realm as soon as possible. Murong Jinlu didn't say anything else. To them, it was still too early to talk about supreme beings, so they didn't want to talk too much about it. When they reached the edge of the safe zone and reached the God realm's defense line, Murong Jinlu pointed to a city and said, this city is the God realm's last line of defense, called Peace City. The meaning of Peace City is to hope that every cultivator who enters the hunting zone can return safely. However, the cultivators who go out to hunt only have a 10% chance of returning unscathed, and a 90% chance of being injured or killed. Sovereigns are in danger of dying at any moment. The eternal paragon world really is cruel. Knight Sorrow immediately felt a wave of sadness as he listened to Murong's instructions. Don't laugh lying drunk on the battlefield. Since ancient times, how many people have returned from a campaign? This was the portrayal of his heart at this moment. Let's go. Let's enter the city and pay a visit to the Golden Crow who is guarding the city. He is the 4th strongest expert in the divine world, second only to the City Lord and the 2 Vice-City Lords, but he has been guarding the city all this time. Speaking of the Golden Crow sovereign, Murong Jinlu's face was full of reverence. Although he was the 4th strongest expert of the divine world, he had always been guarding Peace City in a low-key manner. Many sovereigns of the divine world were saved by him. The Golden Crow. Could he be the ancestor of the divine world's Golden Crow clan? Upon hearing the name Golden Crow Sovereign, Night Sorrow immediately thought of the Golden Crow clan in the God Realm. Yes. The Golden Crow Paragon also ascended from the God Realm several reincarnations ago. Murong pointed the way and explained to Night Sorrow. So the Golden Crow clan also has such a hero. Thinking of the Golden Crow clan that he once had a conflict with, Night Sorrow sighed. He did not expect the Golden Crow clan to have a Golden Crow sovereign. Moreover, this Golden Crow sovereign had the courage to protect the mountains and rivers. Night Sorrow said excitedly, "Let's go and pay a visit to the Golden Crow sovereign." At this time, Murong Jilu smiled and said, "If you want to leave the city, you must get the Golden Crow sovereign's permission. If he doesn't think highly of someone who insists on leaving the city, the result won't be good." "So that's how it is, I understand." Night Sorrow nodded and followed Murong Jilu to find the Golden Crow sovereign who was guarding Peace City. Different from what Night Sorrow imagined, the Golden Crow sovereign did not live in Peace City. Instead, he sat cross-legged outside the city, at the edge of the hunting area. Murong Jilu greets the Golden Crow sovereign. Night Sorrow greets the Golden Crow sovereign. Knowing that the Golden Crow sovereign had been guarding Peace City for thousands of years, Night Sorrow was very moved. He was a person who cared about his country, and now he was full of admiration for the Golden Crow sovereign. Hee. Jilu, I brought a new friend with me this time. Are you going to hunt a desolate beast together? Let me see his strength. Night Sorrow and Murong Jilu bowed. The Golden Crow sovereign, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground, waved his hand to indicate that there was no need for that. He opened his eyes and looked at Night Sorrow. Then, his eyes lit up and he stood up and said, "The middle stage Divine King's realm and the upper stage Sovereign's strength. You are the future leader of the sovereign realm of the Divine Realm. The Golden Crow sovereign is too kind. Night Sorrow does not deserve such praise." Night Sorrow hurriedly said politely. This was not hypocritical modesty, but a matter of etiquette. Ha! If you don't dare to accept it, then no one can. The Golden Crow sovereign had the appearance of a skinny old man. As he stood up and sized up Night Sorrow, a gratified smile appeared on his face. Moreover, there was a dense mist in his eyes. He was obviously excited. The Golden Crow sovereign actually stood up. Murong Jilu, who saw this scene, was completely shocked. He had broken through to the sovereign realm many years ago, but he had never heard of the Golden Crow sovereign standing up for anyone. Thank you for the sovereign's praise. As for Night Sorrow, he was not aware of this. He first bowed modestly and then asked, "Golden Crow sovereign, I wonder if the Golden Crow clan in the Divine Realm is your descendant?" "Oh. You are from the Divine Realm. Do you know the Golden Crow clan?" The Golden Crow sovereign, who was already excited, immediately trembled when he heard Night Sorrow's words. "To tell you the truth, the Golden Crow clan and I became friends after a fight. Before I left, the Divine King Jin Nye had always been in my Divine Realm. Other than the Divine King Jin Nye, there are 2 other sovereigns in the Golden Crow clan, as well as some other monarchs." Night Sorrow did not hide anything. He was very glad that he could bring news of his hometown to the Golden Crow sovereign. "Atr0H Kel, although the Golden Crow clan in the Divine Realm is my descendant, no one should know of my existence. After all, I have been in the Eternal Supreme Realm for too long." The Golden Crow sovereign was a little sad when he mentioned the Golden Crow clan in the Divine Realm. Chapter 2881. Thank you, Supreme Golden Crow. Thank you for your hard work. Although Murong Guides the Way did not mention anything about this. Night Sorrow still understood from the Supreme Golden Crow's words that the Supreme Golden Crow had always been outside Peace City to illuminate the way back for the God Realm's cultivators, so that they would not get lost in the hunting area. Night Sorrow understood and bowed to the Supreme Golden Crow again. "Ha! Go! In our God Realm's hunting area, there are a total of 7 forbidden areas, try not to step into them." The Supreme Golden Crow smiled and continued to sit cross-legged on the ground. There was not even a praying mat under him. Night Sorrow felt an inexplicable heartache seeing this. He calmed down and cupped his fists. Supreme Golden Crow, Knight Sorrow will do his best to change the God Realm's unfavorable situation. I believe in you. The Supreme Golden Crow nodded and looked at Murong Guides. Be a good guide for Knight Sorrow, you will be by his side in the future. Yes. I will follow the orders of the Supreme Golden Crow. Murong Guides the Way first bowed and then looked at Knight Sorrow. Brother Yi, let's go. All right. Knight Sorrow replied and bid farewell to the Supreme Golden Crow. Together with Murong Guides the Way, they walked into the depths of the hunting area. After entering the hunting area for about 3,000 miles, Knight Sorrow could feel a suffocating aura of killing and a thick smell of blood. This is the blood of a ruler that did not disperse for a long time after he was killed. The fallen ruler was called Sky-Bearing. He was originally a great genius of our God realm. But 7 reincarnations ago, he fell into a primitive tribe's trap and was chased all the way until he was killed here. Since then, the Supreme Golden Crow has been guarding outside Peace City. As long as the returning God Realm cultivators enter within 10,000 miles of Peace City, they will be protected by him. Over the past few reincarnations, Supreme Golden Crow has saved over 100 people. Murong Guides the Way explained the origin of the smell of blood to Knight Sorrow. Looks like the competition in the hunting zone is indeed fierce. Although 100 people wasn't a large number, each and every one of them was a ruler. Knight Sorrow sighed with emotion, but at the same time, he also fully understood the cruelty of the hunting zone. At this moment, he opened his mouth and said, "Give me a brief introduction about the primitive tribes." All right. Murong pointed the way and replied, "The so-called primitive tribes is actually just a name that we God Realm cultivators came up with for them. These natives are different from us cultivators. They have green faces and fangs, and they look very similar to wild beasts. They worship evil gods, and every tribe is extremely bloodthirsty. When they see us cultivators, they want to eat us alive. Furthermore, they like to live in groups. When they attack, they will swarm together. If we encounter dozens of Dominator rank natives, it will be difficult to deal with them. However, we'll deal with whatever comes our way. If we encounter them, we'll think of a solution. Now, let's officially begin the hunt." After Knight Sorrow said this, he summoned Cao Ling. At this moment, under Knight Sorrow's full nurturing, Cao Ling had already advanced to the level of a middle celestial lord. She was also slightly taller. Including the 2 horns on her head, she was about 1.5 meters tall. Big brother Knight Sorrow, the aura here is too scary. Ling is a little scared. After being summoned, Cao Ling didn't even have time to use her race's skill before her entire body started to tremble. She obviously couldn't get used to the terrifying aura of the hunting zone, and fear came from the depths of her soul. Ling don't be scared. Knight Sorrow condensed his god territory and power of merit, enveloping Cao Ling. He asked, "Ling, how do you feel now?" "I feel much better now." Cao Ling smiled and began to use her horns to check if there were any treasures around. While Cao Ling was checking her surroundings, Murong Ziliu asked curiously, "Isn't this the descendant of the Horn Clan's sovereign?" "This is the strength of a divine lord." "Did you bring her to the eternal supreme world?" "I brought her here. We are friends." Ling is still young, so her realm is a little low. However, her talent is not bad. Her future achievements won't be bad. Knight Sorrow explained. Horn Ancestor Sovereign knew about Cao Ling, but let her follow Knight Sorrow. As for the other members of the Horn Clan, they had already been arranged by the Horn Clan's sovereign. Very good. With Ling's help, we might not only be able to hunt desolate beasts this time, but also find some treasures. Murong Ziliu was clear about the Horn Clan's abilities and said with a smile. At this moment, he suddenly thought of Yi Sheng of the Xian race of Shao Tianyuan. He asked, "Guide the way. Have you heard of the ruler called Shao Tianxian?" "Shao Tianxian? I've heard of him. He ascended from the god world and is highly valued by the sovereigns. His level of importance is second only to Brother Wan. He seems to be in seclusion to break through to the intermediate sovereign realm. When Murong Ziliu told him about Shao Tianxian, Knight Sorrow sighed in relief. The eternal supreme world was so cruel. He was afraid that Shao Tianxian had already fallen. Knowing that Shao Tianxian was fine, Knight Sorrow was relieved and locked his gaze on Cao Ling. After a while, Cao Ling shook her head and said, "Big brother Knight Sorrow, this place is not the same as the God world. In the God world, Ling can sense the treasures within a few 100,000 li radius. But here, her range is only 8,000 li. Within 8,000 miles around us, there are no natural treasures. The eternal supreme world is even more," Knight Sorrow explained to Cao Ling, with a smile, but just as he said this, a deafening roar came from afar. Desolate beast. This is one of the desolate beasts called the heaven-defying fire blade. Judging from the sound, it should be fighting. Logically speaking, the heaven-defying fire blade shouldn't appear in this place. After Yi Shang used his divine domain to protect Jiao Ling, and put her back into the spatial grotto heaven, Murong pointed into the distance. "Let's go take a look." G0 After Murong Jinlu said the name of the heaven-defying fire blade, he began to talk about its characteristics. Knight Sorrow directly opened the sea serpent's eye and looked into the distance while asking Murong Jinlu to follow. In the hunting area, there were almost no desolate beasts below the sovereign realm. Knight Sorrow and Murong Jinlu did not dare to be careless. They carefully rushed towards the heaven-defying fire blade's roar. So this is a desolate beast. A sovereign realm desolate beast is really not simple. When they got closer, Knight Sorrow saw the heaven-defying fire blade that Murong Jinlu mentioned was fighting with a cultivator. They seemed to be fighting over something. This cultivator was a male cultivator, but he had a very otherworldly aura, giving people a feeling of floating immortality. Knight Sorrow glanced at him and locked his gaze on the heaven-defying fire blade. He discovered that this heaven-defying fire blade was about the height of 10 people. Its head looked like a skull, but there was some skin on it. It wore silver armor and held 2 red blades that seemed to be made of lava in its hands. Chapter 2882. What? That cultivator fighting heaven-defying fire blade isn't from the celestial realm, he's from the celestial realm. How are we going to settle this? Knight Sorrow was flabbergasted by Muronguelu's words. The male cultivator in front of him didn't look any different from a human cultivator, except that he was a little more feminine and had a different temperament. He didn't expect him to come from a different realm from the celestial realm. The territories of each realm are different. The celestial realm has its own territory, he's obviously poaching here. According to the Eternal Sovereign's rules, cultivators from other realms are not allowed to enter the celestial realm's hunting grounds. Muronguelu said unhappily, sizing up the male cultivator from the celestial realm. Then what are we waiting for? Let's go, take down this male cultivator from the celestial realm first, then kill heaven-defying fire blade. Knight Sorrow opened his sea serpent eye and released his divine sense to sense the opponent's strength. He was a middle dominator, about the same cultivation as Master Myriad's sword. He knew that since he and Muronguelu had discovered the male cultivator, he must have discovered them as well. In front of him, the male cultivator was still fighting with the heaven-defying fire blade. Obviously, he did not put him and Murong Jinlu in his eyes. In that case, Knight Sorrow wasn't going to be polite. But he's from the celestial realm, which is ranked in the top 1,000. Our celestial realm is only in the 9,000th, the difference in strength is too great. If we offend him, we'll suffer retribution. After Yi Shang finished speaking, Murong Lu revealed a troubled expression. The people from the heaven immortal realm were poaching right in front of them. Furthermore, they did not place them in their eyes at all. They were simply ignoring them. This was simply too arrogant. However, the celestial realm's strength was much weaker than the other party. If they offended him, the gains wouldn't make up for the losses. Although Murong Zizhen knew that Knight Sorrow's strength was valiant and might not be inferior to his opponent, he was still cowering and somewhat fearful. Guelu. Let me tell you something. If someone pees on your leg and you pretend you don't see it, he'll ride on your neck and pee on you next time. You stand here and watch me destroy him. Knight Sorrow was well aware of Murong Zizhen's worries, but ever since he started cultivating, he understood that in the world of cultivation, blindly enduring would not earn him any respect. If he didn't want the other party to bully him, the only way was to fight back and beat him into submission. After telling Murong Zizhen the way, Knight Sorrow soared into the sky and rushed towards the battle between the male cultivators of the Heaven Immortal Realm and the Heaven-defying Fire Blade. Humph. Divine King Realm Ants. Not even the sovereigns of your divine world would dare to make a move, yet you've come here to throw your life away. You really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Seeing Knight Sorrow's attack, the male cultivator from the Heaven Immortal Realm laughed instead of being shocked. He glanced at Knight Sorrow with disdain, then raised his hand and pointed. His finger seemed very casual, but the energy contained within it gave off the feeling of connecting with heaven and earth. Its power was extremely shocking. If it had been an ordinary divine king, he would have been blasted to smithereens. Watch out, Brother Yi. Murong Zizhen couldn't just stand by and watch when he saw the male cultivator from the Heaven Immortal Realm attack. At the same time, he immediately chased after Knight Sorrow. Just a small trick. Knight Sorrow snorted disdainfully in the face of the attack from the Heaven Immortal Realm and pointed with his finger as well. This finger contained a trace of the sovereign's laws. It directly scattered the opponent's finger and attacked the male cultivator from the Heaven Immortal Realm. Who would have thought that a divine king with decent talent would appear in this trash realm? The male cultivator from the Heaven Immortal Realm clearly hadn't expected that his attack would be blocked by a divine king and that his opponent would counterattack. While resisting the heaven-defying fire blade, he pointed again and neutralized the energy from Knight Sorrow's attack. Clang! At this moment, the heaven-defying fire blade suddenly chopped down on the male cultivator's shoulder. The huge blade smashed into the male cultivator's body and slammed him into the ground. Damn it! Trash cultivators from the heavenly realm, how dare you injure me? Both of you must die. Seal the sky spell. The male cultivator from the Heaven Immortal Realm was instantly enraged after being injured. He jumped up from the ground and threw a talisman at the heaven-defying fire blade in midair. The heaven-defying fire blade was instantly stunned and motionless when it was hit by the talisman. What kind of technique is this? If we're hit, will we be sealed like the heaven-defying fire blade? Knight Sorrow was slightly taken aback by the opponent's technique. He transmitted his voice to Murong Zizhen and asked. This is a talisman refined by a sovereign. It can seal ordinary wild beasts, but it has no effect on cultivators. As Murong Zizhen explained to Knight Sorrow, he threw the feather fan in his hand into the air. After the feather fan was thrown into the air, it immediately split into 99 feathers and shot toward the male cultivator from the Heaven Immortal Realm. How could he, who was already in a bad mood, tolerate the other party's attack? Your technique is not bad, but your power is still too weak. Cultivators from the Heaven Immortal Realm are all good-looking but useless trash. Every feather Murong Zizhen shot out was a Dominator-level attack. The range of this attack was very large, and in a more stable world like the Eternal Supreme Realm, it was very difficult to dodge. However, the male cultivator from the Heaven Immortal Realm laughed disdainfully in the face of his comprehension. At the same time, the male cultivator took out an umbrella-shaped Dominator-level artifact and threw it into the air. It immediately emitted 100 zhang of golden light. The golden light formed a defensive barrier that blocked all of Murong Zizhen's feathers. If the feather fan doesn't work, there's still a paper fan. Murong Zizhen didn't stop his attack even though the feather fan was blocked. Instead, he took out a paper fan and attacked again. This time, the paper fan didn't leave his hand. Instead, he blasted out a tornado that reached the sky. Ha! I already said that you Heaven Immortal Realm cultivators are good-looking but useless trash. Break! In the face of Murong Zizhen's attack, the Heaven Immortal Realm cultivator once again raised a disdainful smile and roared the word, break. This roar actually scattered Murong Zizhen's attack. What? It was broken so easily. Although Murong Zizhen was a lesser dominator, he still had some confidence in his own strength. After all, he was one of the young geniuses nurtured by the Heaven Immortal realm and hadn't cultivated for too long. His attack couldn't break through his opponent's defense at all. This was a big blow to his confidence. Although both sides were only probing each other's strength, Murong Zizhen was certain that this male cultivator from the Heaven Immortal realm was stronger than the Myriad Swords sect before he went into seclusion. He couldn't help but look at Night Sorrow. He was worried that the two of them together wouldn't be a match for the Heaven Immortal realm cultivator. Don't worry. Chapter 2883. Night Sorrow hadn't made a move when Murong Guides the Way had attacked. Although he'd called for them to attack together, he didn't think it would be a 2-on-1 fight. He should be able to handle it. Alright. Brother Yi. Then it's up to you. Although Night Sorrow was only a lesser divine king, Murong Guides the Way knew that he wasn't weak at all. At the very least, he wasn't inferior to the Myriad Sword sect. Humph. You mid-level divine king ant, do you really think you can fight me just because you were lucky enough to break one of my moves? Night Sorrow's words completely enraged the celestial realm male cultivator. In his opinion, the divine king was still the divine king. There was a world of difference between him and the sovereign. To the divine king, the sovereign was an existence that couldn't be offended. Night Sorrow had said he wanted to fight him one-on-one. This immediately enraged the celestial realm male cultivator. You'll know once you try whether or not we can fight. Although Night Sorrow looked down on the celestial realm male cultivator, he still took him seriously. After all, this was his first time fighting someone from another realm since coming to the divine realm. I'll give it a try then. Remember, the one who's going to kill you is Ji Yun. Celestial Immortal Beheading Sword. Ji Yun of the Celestial Immortal Realm roared and unsheathed his sword, slashing at Yishang. This sword strike of his was very elegant and nimble, with a bit of a fluttering immortal flavor. Celestial Immortal Beheading Sword. Not bad, but I'm not a demon. You can't cut me. In the face of Ji Yun's oppressive divine domain, Night Sorrow immediately unleashed the power of good karma around him and shattered it. Then he released his divine domain, which contained the laws of the sovereign, and used the great immortal sword art he'd learned from the Myriad Sword sect to transform himself into a giant sword. Ji Yun's sword was as ethereal as an immortal's. The giant sword that Night Sorrow had transformed into had the meaning of a heavy sword without a sharp edge. Boom! After the two of them collided, some of the ancient trees around them were shaken to the ground. Even the heaven-defying fire blade, which was sealed by the talisman, simply fell down. The result of this exchange was that Night Sorrow had the upper hand. The reason for that was because he was not injured at all. On the other hand, Ji Yun's sword had been directly shattered. Furthermore, he had suffered quite a bit of injury. If that's all you've got, I'll capture you alive and bring you back to the divine world. Night Sorrow didn't get carried away even though he had gained the upper hand with one strike. This was his first time fighting against the ruler of another realm, so he wasn't sure if his opponent had any trump cards up his sleeve. Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! I will make you understand that an ant will always be an ant. Ji Yun, who had suffered losses consecutively, was not only furious, but had also gone completely mad. He raised his head and roared 3 times before activating a jade talisman. After activating the jade talisman, it was immediately covered in a layer of green light. Being enveloped by this green light, Ji Yun's aura increased by 6 to 7 times. World Annihilating Immortal Dust Art. After increasing his strength, Ji Yun leapt into the air and directly jumped into the clouds. Then, 2 enormous transparent wings of light suddenly grew out of his back. When these wings of light stretched out, they were roughly 100 meters long. After Ji Yun roared out the world-annihilating immortal dust art, he used the wings of light behind him to launch an attack that contained the aura of annihilation. The attributes of this attack seemed somewhat heterogeneous. It was mainly of the wind attribute, but it also contained a large amount of destructive aura. Brother Yi, be careful. This is one of the strongest techniques of the divine immortal realm. Seeing Ji Yun use the world-annihilating immortal dust art, Murong guides the way immediately raised Night Sorrow's level by 1. In fact, even without Murong guides the way's warning, Night Sorrow could feel the power of this attack. 33 Heaven's Secret Battle Art. Facing this world-annihilating immortal dust art, Night Sorrow immediately used the secret art of the Trestrimsa Heavens, breaking through to the God King level and absorbing the laws and essence of the invincible hegemon. Now that he used this secret art, his power instantly increased by roughly 25 times. Now that he used it, the aura around him instantly became stronger. Reincarnation Spear Art. After increasing his strength, Night Sorrow, who was originally preparing to use the great immortal sword art, suddenly had a flash of insight. He immediately used his own aura to condense a reincarnation halberd and fiercely attacked Ji Yun. It collided with the world-annihilating immortal dust art. After a series of explosions, the two of them were evenly matched. However, Ji Yun's wings of light dimmed in an instant. Night Sorrow, on the other hand, didn't suffer any major injuries. He just consumed a bit more energy. He had always liked to use the spear, so using the great immortal sword art was somewhat awkward. Using the improved reincarnation spear art felt very refreshing. What? You're actually unharmed. This seat still underestimated you. Ji Yun's eyes widened when he saw that not only was Yi Shan uninjured, but he was also in high spirits. The attack just now was already his strongest attack without using any external power, but it still couldn't defeat a mid-level Divine King. This made him completely uneasy. At this point, you still call yourself this seat? How laughable. You're about to become a prisoner, so you'd better put away your arrogance. Seeing Ji Yun's reaction, Night Sorrow, who was extremely experienced in battle, immediately judged his strength. He suddenly used the Divine Origin Trap formation, directly locking Ji Yun in the void. Before Ji Yun could react, he entered the sealed space and started a fierce close combat with him. This Ji Yun came from the heavenly immortal realm. Not only did he look a bit feminine, but he also didn't excel in close combat. Trapped in the sealed space, he was quickly suppressed by Night Sorrow. I, Ji Yun, come from the heavenly immortal realm. Your strength is not bad, but I advise you to let me leave safely. Otherwise, your leader of the heavenly immortal realm will suffer a destructive blow. After Ji Yun realized that he was not Night Sorrow's opponent, he immediately threatened him with an overbearing aura. Seeing Ji Yun's arrogant face, Night Sorrow smiled and said, "Don't think too highly of yourself, and don't underestimate others. If you could destroy my heavenly immortal realm, I believe your heavenly immortal realm would have done so long ago. Moreover, a ruler of your level wouldn't be considered outstanding in the heavenly immortal realm. No one would care about your life or death." Even as he replied, Night Sorrow didn't back down in the slightest. He continued to suppress Ji Yun. It didn't take long for Ji Yun to be completely captured. In truth, Ji Yun still had a trump card, but Night Sorrow had suddenly launched a close combat attack, so he didn't have the opportunity to use it. After capturing him, Night Sorrow immediately sealed Ji Yun's divine origin force and divine soul power, then put him into the heavenly immortal realm. Just you wait, the entire heavenly immortal realm will wait. My elder brother and father won't let you off. My elder brother is one of the top 1,000 rulers in the sovereign realm. My father. After being put into Night Sorrow's heavenly immortal realm, Ji Yun roared with indignation. Chapter 2884. Night Sorrow. There are tens of thousands of realms in the sovereign realm, and countless sovereigns. To be able to rank in the top 1,000, their strength is not to be underestimated. We still need to be careful. Night Sorrow didn't pay much attention to Ji Yun's words, but Murong Zijin reminded him nervously. In my opinion, the strength of the other party is not important. What's important is that when others slap us in the face, we have to slap them back. If we are not as strong as them, we will work hard to improve until we have the strength to fight back. Murong Zijin's words were said with good intentions, Night Sorrow knew, but he had his own principles, so he followed his heart and said. Perhaps you are right. Our god realm is too tolerant in some aspects, which led to the other realms becoming more aggressive. We have always been worried about being destroyed, but being tolerant will not help us at all. There must be another reason why we are not destroyed. After Night Sorrow finished speaking, Murong Zijin was silent for a while, then said. The nearby realms are probably waiting for our god realm's fortune to disappear completely, no longer protected by the laws of the Eternal Supreme Realm, then they will launch a large-scale attack. However, I will not let that happen. Although he didn't know much about the Eternal Supreme Realm, Night Sorrow could understand the current situation. The future of the God Realm is entrusted to Brother Yi and Brother Wan. Also, that Xiao Tianxian you mentioned seems to have some strength. As for the rest of us, we are not even worth mentioning. Murong Zijin sighed. He knew his own strength well. On the list of sovereigns, he couldn't even enter the top 100,000. In the battle for fortune a few decades later, he wouldn't be able to contribute much. He could only place his hopes on Night Sorrow and the Myriad Sword sect. I wonder if sect master Xiao has been cultivating for less than 3 eras. At this time, Night Sorrow said doubtfully. Xiao Tianxian was the sect master of Tianyun School. He always thought that he was an old monster who had been cultivating for a long time. Murong Zijin smiled, definitely not 3 eras, otherwise the sovereigns wouldn't have nurtured him like this. That makes sense. He was once the sect master of my sect, but I really don't know how long he has been cultivating. Night Sorrow said with a smile. Then, he looked at the sealed heaven-defying fire blade and said, how should we deal with this heaven-defying fire blade? Ha! Normally, the supremes of our divine world wouldn't refine this kind of sealing talisman. Now that it has been sealed by Ji Yun, we can take advantage of it and bring it back to our heavenly abode. We can exchange it for a lot of things. Murong Jinlu said with a smile. Capturing a heaven-defying fire blade alive was not an easy task. The resources that could be exchanged for would be several times more than a dead one. Alright, then I'll keep it in my space paradise. What I mean is to continue hunting desolate beasts and searching for resources. What do you think? Night Sorrow asked as he kept the heaven-defying fire blade in his space paradise. Then let's continue hunting desolate beasts. I also feel that there's no point in going back right after coming out. In the battle just now, Murong Jinlu had already realized Night Sorrow's strength. He felt that traveling with him would not be a problem in terms of safety. Thus, he nodded and agreed to continue traveling. What kind of places in a hunting zone have more resources? After that, Night Sorrow and Murong Jinlu searched for 2 days in the hunting zone. They did not find any resources and only encountered a desolate beast. After killing the desolate beast, Night Sorrow asked. If we're talking about places with more resources, then it's definitely the 7 forbidden zones. However, the death rate of the 7 forbidden zones is too high. If a sovereign realm cultivator rashly enters, there's more than a 50% chance of dying. Thus, after a long time, no one dares to go there anymore. Murong Jinlu thought for a while, then looked at Night Sorrow with a worried expression. Towards the 7 forbidden zones, his expression would change at the mention of them. The more dangerous the place, the more opportunities there are. How about this, you lead me to the nearest forbidden zone. After we arrive, I'll send you and Linger back. Then, I'll go back in myself. Night Sorrow looked at Murong Jinlu and said. The death rate of the forbidden zones was too high. He did not want Murong Jinlu and Cao Linger to take the risk. He was prepared to send them back and enter himself. There were still a few decades left before the battle for luck. Other than the 7 forbidden zones, the hunting zone was either controlled by tribes or plundered. There were not many desolate beasts or resources. Relatively speaking, it was already considered very barren. Wanting to quickly accumulate materials or resources was simply not realistic. Brother Yi, what are you saying? We came out together. How can you say that I'll retreat first? Hearing Night Sorrow's words, Murong Jinlu was a little unwilling. He retorted and pointed to a mountain peak in the distance, that's the closest forbidden zone to us. It's called Mass Burial Peak. Although it looks like a mountain peak, once you get close, you'll enter another space. In that space, there are large amounts of desolate beasts and resources. Furthermore, there are other hidden dangers. I'm not willing to let you and Linger take the risk. Looking at Mass Burial Peak, Night Sorrow sighed and continued, lead the way. Tell me everything you know. Mass Burial Peak is the closest forbidden zone to the God realm. Relatively speaking, the death rate is relatively lower. Its specialty is that the desolate beasts are densely distributed. If you don't form a group of 5 or more people, it'll be very difficult to fight. If I let you go in alone, how can I be at ease? Murong Zhenlu explained all the characteristics of Mass Burial Peak. However, he helplessly expressed that the current God realm's understanding of Mass Burial Peak was only the tip of the iceberg. After all, the ruler of the God realm did not investigate Mass Burial Peak in depth. Let's go nearby and observe first. If it's too dangerous, I'll send you and Linger back. I'll go in myself. As he spoke, Yishang and Murong pointed the way towards Disorderly Burial Peak. The closer they got to Mass Burial Peak, the more desolate beasts they encountered. After killing 2 heaven-defying fire blades and a dragon claw skeleton, Murong Zhenlu said, Brother Yi, look around the Forbidden Zone. There are a lot of desolate beasts. Why don't we hunt them nearby and go back to exchange for materials and resources? The materials and resources in the God realm are fixed. They're all placed there by the sovereigns. If we exchange for them, there'll be a corresponding decrease. Why don't we think of a way to find the materials and resources ourselves? Night Sorrow said and continued, when we get close to the Forbidden Zone, the number of desolate beasts will increase. If we go in, it'll be even more dangerous. I'll send you and Linger back and go in myself. After saying that, Night Sorrow sent Murong Zhenlu and Cao Linger back to Peace City. Chapter 2885. On his way back, Night Sorrow had made some preparations. He knew that the number of desolate beasts around the Forbidden Zone was increasing. After entering the Forbidden Zone, it was even more obvious. When he was 50,000 kilometers away from the Forbidden Zone, the number of desolate beasts at the foot of the mountain gradually increased. In some areas, groups of desolate beasts appeared. The most terrifying of them all were the heaven-devouring ants. Each of them was the size of an ordinary tiger or leopard. Although they were small compared to other desolate beasts and were all at the level of the Divine King, they were made up of tens of thousands of heaven-devouring ants. Wherever they passed, anything that smelled of blood would be eaten to the bone. These heaven-devouring ants really can't be provoked. Fortunately, they didn't block the entrance to the Forbidden Zone. Seeing the heaven-devouring ants instantly eat a heaven-defying fire blade into a skeleton, Night Sorrow could not help but feel a chill. These heaven-devouring ants could not be resisted in a normal battle. Special methods were needed to deal with them. However, Night Sorrow was in the dark and could choose another route. With the heaven-devouring ants occupying one area, he quickly changed directions. However, Night Sorrow soon discovered another group. This was a group of mountain demons. Compared to the heaven-devouring ants, there were not many of them. There were about a dozen of them, but the area they occupied was not smaller than the heaven-devouring ants. These mountain-piercing demons looked like standing pangolins, but also like standing earth dragons. Their bodies seemed to be made of silver water, and when they stood up, they looked like small mountains. Each of their auras was at the ruler level. It's not easy to provoke so many mountain demons at once. Night Sorrow observed for a while and discovered that the mountain demons' territory was adjacent to the heaven-devouring ants. The two groups had completely blocked off the path. Knowing that the mountain demons were not easy to deal with, Night Sorrow continued to take a detour. In the end, he discovered that in addition to the mountain demons and heaven-devouring ants, there were also dragon claw skeletons and heaven-defying fire blade groups. These 4 groups were all connected and blocked off the path to Disorderly Burial Peak. This shouldn't be. If it was like this before, he would have told me to give directions. According to him, entering Disorderly Burial Peak shouldn't be so difficult. Observing the various races, Yi Shang was a little confused about what was happening. At this time, he thought of Ji Yun, who was in the space grotto heaven. He transmitted his voice to Ji Yun. Do you know anything about the Forbidden Zone? My brother won't let you off. However, after Night Sorrow asked Ji Yun to speak, he immediately said this. Hearing this, Night Sorrow was speechless. No matter how powerful your brother is, he's still your brother. It has nothing to do with you. You are now a prisoner, although you may be killed. I hope you understand your situation. Clearly, Ji Yun had been spoiled rotten in celestial immortal world. It was easy to use his elder brother's or father's name, but there was no one who would spoil him. Humph. You don't dare to kill me. At most, you can imprison me and wait for my elder brother to come and fetch me. Don't forget how trashy your divine realm is. But Ji Yun had an indifferent look on his face. He didn't care at all. Even under such circumstances, he still didn't take the territory of the God realm seriously. He was truly arrogant. I think you've really been spoiled rotten. Now, I'll give you two options. 1. Go out and be my bait to attract the attention of the sky-devouring ants. 2. Help me figure out what's going on. Why is it so difficult for the mass burial wasps to enter? Night Sorrow threatened noncommittally. He didn't care about Ji Yun's elder brother and father at all. The strong were born fearless. If they were scared to death because of a ruler ranked in the top 1,000, then there was no need to continue cultivating. Humph. Trying to scare me with the sky-devouring ants? I, Ji Yun, lend you some guts. Let's see if you dare. Trash from the divine realm. Despite being threatened, Ji Yun still had an indifferent expression on his face. He clearly had great confidence in his elder brother and father. You really won't shed tears until you see the coffin. I didn't want to use you as bait, but since you're so stubborn, there's no point in keeping you. Remember, if there's a next life, don't be so arrogant. Although my divine realm isn't strong, it's not something you and your elder brother can scare off. Today, I'll leave a fragment of your soul so that you can witness the rise of my divine realm in the future. Night Sorrow wasn't a cruel person, but Ji Yun, a mere prisoner, had repeatedly looked down on his divine realm territory. This made him furious. If he still didn't dare to attack Ji Yun under such circumstances, then he would be too cowardly. Stealing his heart, Night Sorrow left a fragment of Ji Yun's soul and undid half of his seal. Then, he threw him into the sky-devouring ants' territory. Seeing that there was food, the sky-devouring ants immediately moved, covering the sky as they chased after Ji Yun. Although the sky-devouring ants weren't very large, and none of them were rulers, when they moved, they covered the sky and covered the earth. They could even fly. Damn it! How dare you do this to me? If I, Ji Yun, survive today, I'll make my father wash your divine realm territory with blood. After being thrown into the sky-devouring ants' territory by Night Sorrow, Ji Yun finally felt fear. After cursing Night Sorrow, he began to run frantically towards Night Sorrow's location. He wanted to lure the sky-devouring ants to Night Sorrow's location. Knowing how powerful the sky-devouring ants were, Ji Yun no longer hoped to escape. He only hoped that he could kill Night Sorrow. Hee. It's just as I thought. At this time, Night Sorrow appeared in another location. Before he released Ji Yun, he had already set up a formation to confuse Ji Yun's location. At this time, Ji Yun didn't even know where to go, so he could help Night Sorrow lure the sky-devouring ants away. Taking advantage of the fact that the sky-devouring ants were lured away, Night Sorrow took the opportunity to invade their territory and rush towards the entrance of the mass burial bees. Something must be wrong if something was wrong. He felt that since the mass burial bees' territory was so tightly guarded, something must have happened inside. Perhaps a rare treasure had appeared. Logically speaking, the sky-devouring ants should have a sovereign rank leader. However, there isn't one in their territory. It's very likely that they've entered the mass burial bees. After entering the sky-devouring ants' territory, Night Sorrow had been using his god's soul to investigate the movements of the sky-devouring ants, in case there was a sovereign rank leader. However, after a round of investigation, he didn't find anything out of the ordinary. By now, Ji-yun had already been surrounded by the heaven-devouring ants. Night Sorrow undid all of his seals and transmitted, "If you can survive, I'll let bygones be bygones for trespassing on the God Realm's territory." "You're despicable." Ji-yun was furious that Night Sorrow had used him as bait to lure the tiger away from the mountain. However, facing the sky-devouring ants, with his spatial artifact left behind by Night Sorrow, he was powerless. Chapter 2886. Night Sorrow did not pay attention to Ji-yun after entering the disorderly burial peak. However, from Ji-yun's remnant soul, he knew that Ji-yun's fate was extremely miserable. Night Sorrow did not have the energy to think about it. Because after entering the disorderly burial peak's forbidden area, he felt a dense oppressive aura. Even the air became austere. Even though Night Sorrow had been fighting for so long, he still felt his scalp go numb. Standing at the edge of the forbidden area, Night Sorrow saw an endless mountain range and a large number of spatial cracks. The aura of the spatial cracks gave people a terrifying feeling. It did not seem to be the dominator rank, but the power of the sovereign realm. At the entrance of the disorderly burial peak, there was a large number of corpses. A portion of them were from the 4 major races that Night Sorrow was familiar with. The other portion was something he had never seen before, but he had heard Murong-Junlu describe them. These corpses should be the corpses of the leaders of the 4 major races outside. When they attacked, they alarmed the creatures in the forbidden area, causing a great battle. After analyzing Night Sorrow, he immediately understood what had happened. This made him very happy. 34 creatures in the nearby forbidden area had died. Every one of them was a dominator rank. If not for the leaders of the 4 major races leading their people to attack, Night Sorrow would not be a match for them alone. According to Murong-Junlu, although the forbidden area is very dangerous, it should not be to the extent of encountering dozens of dire beasts right after entering. Night Sorrow did not leave immediately. Instead, he kept the slightly complete dire beast corpses and those that could be used as materials into his spatial artifact. These materials might not mean much to a desolate beast, but any cultivator in the firmament would be able to make use of them. It was a huge haul. After collecting all the useful materials, Night Sorrow used the sea serpent's eye to observe the surrounding terrain. As for the power of his consciousness, he did not release it casually. This was because he was not sure what kind of dire beasts were in the forbidden area. He was afraid that if he carelessly released his spiritual energy, it would cause unnecessary trouble. Because there were 4 leaders of the 4 major territories, Night Sorrow had been following their tracks all the way to the depths of the forbidden area, which was the mountain range. When Night Sorrow truly stepped into Chaotic Burial Peak, he could not help but feel his hair stand on end. He felt extremely flustered. That feeling was like a newborn deer being stared at by a colorful tiger. If the other party attacked, Xiaolu would not be able to resist at all. Night Sorrow's heart skipped a beat as he said, "How is this possible? Is there someone surpassing the 9 heavens supreme realm in the forbidden area? I've never heard the hegemons mention that the eternal autarch realm has an existence that surpasses the autarch level." Yi Shang's heart was extremely desolate. Even his hands were trembling. This was a fear he had never felt since he started cultivating. It even made him want to leave. However, just as Night Sorrow was about to leave, this heart-palpitating feeling suddenly disappeared. The feeling of being stared at completely disappeared. What remained was the original oppressive aura of the forbidden area. Yi Shang took a deep breath and thought to himself, nothing ventured, nothing gained. Since that terrifying aura wasn't targeting him, then he might as well go deeper. Ow! Just as Night Sorrow was pondering, a huge golden devil kuei suddenly charged towards Night Sorrow from the forest. This golden devil kuei was about 300 feet tall. Its entire body seemed to be made out of gold and was filled with power. Oh! Isn't this the golden desolate beast mentioned by Guiding Lu? It's so easy to encounter. Discovering that the attacking desolate beast was a golden devil Kuei, Night Sorrow, who was originally somewhat absent-minded, immediately became excited. According to Murong Guiding Lu, golden desolate beasts were extremely difficult to encounter. After killing them, not only could one obtain a large amount of hegemon rank materials, one could also obtain a trace of luck from the eternal autarch realm. It could be said that killing golden desolate beasts would bring great benefits. However, golden desolate beasts were much stronger than ordinary desolate beasts. When Night Sorrow was condensing his deity domain, he could not help but raise his guard. As for the golden devil Kuei in front of him, its realm was lower-level hegemon rank. Relatively speaking, it was not too high. According to Murong Guiding Lu, upper-level hegemon rank golden desolate beasts were basically difficult for hegemon rank cultivators to deal with. Although Night Sorrow's battle strength was astonishing, in a one-on-one fight, he was definitely not its opponent. Boom! The golden devil Kuei ferociously attacked. Night Sorrow immediately strengthened his aura and suddenly sent out a palm. After the two of them collided, Night Sorrow discovered that the golden devil Kuei that was charging over only stopped its body and did not retreat half a step. Very strong indeed. Although this palm did not contain any attribute, Night Sorrow had already used his full strength and did not hold back in terms of strength. Ow! I'll kill you. The golden devil Kuei was at hegemon rank. Its intelligence was very high and it could already speak human language. With a roar, it completely released its deity domain. Its golden body immediately emitted boundless golden light, illuminating the surrounding sky. According to the ancient records, this was a sign that the golden desolate beast was preparing to go all out. It's better for me to kill you. Facing it, Night Sorrow immediately became more focused and prepared to think of a way to quickly kill it. Because in the forbidden area, there must be other desolate beasts. Not to mention the distant ones, if the four great clans appeared together, Night Sorrow would not be able to deal with them. He was afraid that the fierce battle with the golden devil Kuei would cause too much of a commotion and attract other dangerous factors. After saying that, Night Sorrow directly activated the 33 Heavens battle secret technique to increase his strength. Then, without hesitation, he used the Divine Origin Trap Array and Reincarnation Spear Art. He turned himself and his deity domain into a huge divine halberd and smashed it towards the golden devil Kuei. Boom! The golden devil Kuei, who was bound by the Divine Origin Trap Array, was originally very heavy. It could not dodge this attack and was ruthlessly bombarded on its body. However, the golden devil Kuei's body seemed to be made of indestructible iron essence. After being bombarded by Night Sorrow, it did not suffer any obvious injuries. It's really strong. No wonder it's known as one of the best materials in the Eternal Supreme World. When the golden devil Kuei's attack did not succeed, Night Sorrow hurriedly used the dragon traveling step to dodge the attack. The golden devil Kuei's body was too strong. There was no benefit for him to take it head-on. Then, using the flexibility of his body, he began to tangle with the golden devil Kuei. However, although his attacks continuously hit the golden desolate beast's body, it was difficult to have a fatal effect. Moreover, using the power of the divine soul to attack was not of much use. This time, Night Sorrow was stumped. For a moment, he did not know how to deal with the golden devil Kuei in front of him. Cultivator, your attack, to me, is just a tickle. Die. Chapter 2887. At the same time, the golden devil leader's eyes shot out two golden lights, directly piercing Night Sorrow's eyes. Not good. This kind of light can paralyze the mind. Being illuminated by this light, Night Sorrow suddenly found that he was temporarily paralyzed. Awoo. Go to hell. After paralyzing Night Sorrow, the golden devil leader immediately waved its giant palm and slapped towards Night Sorrow. With a clang, Night Sorrow was ruthlessly slapped into the ground, creating a huge pit on the hillside. Cough, cough. After suffering the solid palm of the golden devil leader, Night Sorrow felt as if his whole body was about to fall apart. This was an experience he had not encountered for a long time, so he immediately used a secret method to recover. You are not dead, you are not the same as other cultivators. At the Divine King realm, he already had such strength and toughness of his body. If you become a servant of this king will spare your life. The Golden Devil leader was a little surprised that he did not kill Night Sorrow with one palm. Then, he opened his mouth and asked Night Sorrow to become his servant. Servant? Why don't you be my material? With Night Sorrow's character, how could he become a servant of a wild beast? He roared and condensed the power of virtue around his body. Once again, the Golden Devil leader used the reincarnation spear technique. This attack was different from the previous one. There was no divine essence trapping array, but the Golden Devil leader still could not dodge it. However, when Night Sorrow attacked, the Golden Devil leader slapped out a powerful palm. In its opinion, although Night Sorrow's strength was good, compared to itself, he was still a little weaker. However, the result shocked the Golden Demonic Chieftain. Although Night Sorrow's strength was not much different from before, the power of virtue was extremely terrifying and sent it flying. Again. After sending the Golden Devil leader flying, Night Sorrow once again blasted out a palm in a moment. This palm strike was different from the previous one. He had infused the reincarnation attribute into it to complement the power of merit. With a loud rumble, the Golden Devil Kuei, which had been flying through the air, was struck once more and smashed into the ground. The energy of virtue and the energy of samsara wasn't something that he could resist by relying on the strength of his body. So the power of merit has such an effect on desolate beasts. When fighting the desolate beasts outside, Night Sorrow did not expend much effort. He did not even use the power of merit. After killing it, the amount of great virtue he obtained was not much. As a result, Night Sorrow had neglected the power of virtue. After trying it out, he discovered that the power of virtue was still an important trump card of his. Killing the Golden Demonic Chief and extracting its essence should be enough to create a good Dominator rank divine artifact. I'm really not used to fighting empty-handed. At this point in the battle, Night Sorrow had already determined that the Golden Demonic leader basically had no chance to resist. He continuously suppressed it and killed it with his storm-like attacks. Before it was killed, the Golden Demonic leader kept begging for mercy. It wanted to be Night Sorrow's servant and said that it could introduce the situation of disorderly burial peak to him. Night Sorrow was very interested in this, but he did not accept it. With a Golden Demonic leader on him, he would definitely be targeted by others. It was definitely not worth the loss. As for the matters in the Forbidden Zone, he could ask other desolate beasts. After the Golden Demonic leader was killed, its body underwent a transformation. It turned into a pile of golden iron essence that overflowed with essence. Even its bones had fused into a huge piece of material. Looking at the material that the Golden Demonic leader had turned into, Night Sorrow nodded with satisfaction. He kept it and prepared to find a place to set up an array to begin refining and refining. Call out the material that the Golden Demonic beast has turned into. Otherwise, you will be refined into an artifact yourself. At this moment, a cold voice suddenly rang out. When this voice sounded, Night Sorrow immediately felt as if his whole body was being pricked by needles. Who are you? Although Night Sorrow felt uncomfortable, it was different from when he had just entered the Forbidden Zone. He knew that the opponent in front of him was not an existence that he could not fight against at all. After collecting the Golden Demonic leader's material, he turned around and looked at the opponent with the sea serpent eye. He realized that it was a three-eyed cultivator. I am from the Celestial Eye territory. You are a cultivator from the realm of gods, right? Hand over the material that you have just collected and I can spare your life. The three-eyed cultivator from the Celestial Eye territory looked coldly at Night Sorrow as if he was looking at a dead man. Another child of fortune. You also entered disorderly burial peak from the realm of gods. Night Sorrow said coldly as he looked at the three-eyed cultivator from the Celestial Eye territory. Although the realm of gods was currently very weak, the continuous appearance of cultivators from other territories had made him very unhappy. Your realm of gods has no luck. It is your honor that I am here to take the treasure. You are lucky. I am Tong Qing and I am ranked in the top 2,000 of the Sovereign Board. Tong Qing had obviously seen the battle between Knight Sorrow and the Golden Demonic Leader. She did not find his cultivation level as a divine king to be laughable. However, she was still extremely arrogant. It was obvious that she felt that her strength was superior. I understand now. Your eyes are very special. You are able to observe my battle from a distance that I cannot detect. Knight Sorrow sized up Tong Qing and quickly guessed what was going on. Usually, if a cultivator was observing his battle from a close distance, he would definitely be able to detect it. This Tong Qing obviously had a good eye technique. She had seen the battle between the Golden Demonic Leader from a long distance away and rushed over. However, she was a little late and just in time for Knight Sorrow to collect the material that the Golden Demonic Leader had turned into. So what if you understand? With your strength, you are no match for me. Hand over the material that the Golden Demonic Leader has turned into or I will kill you immediately. Tong Qing's words were filled with contempt and coldness. You barged into the hunting area of the realm of gods for no reason and even dared to threaten the cultivators of the realm of gods. In your eyes, do you think that the realm of gods is easy to bully? Knight Sorrow had seen people kill others and steal their treasures. He did not think much of it. What he was angry about was that Tong Qing was looking down on the realm of gods. The realm of gods is easy to bully. You are all a bunch of trash. You have some potential. However, if you dare to question me, what awaits you is endless torture. Tong Qing shouted arrogantly. She used her third eye to size up Knight Sorrow as if she wanted to see through him. However, with the protection of the power of merit, she could not see through Tong Qing. If the realm of gods is filled with trash, then you are even worse than trash. Today, I, Knight Sorrow, will let you and the others who trespass into the realm of gods know that you have to pay the price for coming here. Tong Qing's attitude was very arrogant. Knight Sorrow was completely enraged. Chapter 2888. Ha ha ha. What a joke. You, a divine king, want to reverse everything and protect the entire realm of the gods. Do you have the strength to do that? Clear disdain appeared on Tong Qing's face when he saw Yishang's attitude. In his opinion, it was praiseworthy for Yishang to be able to defeat the Golden Demonic Leader as a god king. However, in Tong Qing's eyes, Knight Sorrow was too confident. He did not believe that there was anyone who could reverse yin and yang in the current state of the realm of the gods. If you don't even have the heart to protect the realm of the gods, you will be destroyed. Yishang roared and continued, let's not talk that far. I'll deal with you first, intruder. Kill me first. Let me kill you first. Do you really think that by relying on middle-level divine king strength, you can fight with this seat? Wind Thunder Celestial Eye Technique. Tong Qing said disdainfully. He then used his eye technique and shot it at Knight Sorrow. The eye technique that he used was from two normal eyes. One of his eyes used the wind elemental attack while the other used the lightning elemental attack. Although the two elemental attacks were not too terrifying, they were powerful. When the two rays of light shone on him, Knight Sorrow felt a pressure that was different from before. It turned out that this eye technique did not only use divine origin energy to attack, it could also attack one's divine soul. Not bad. I wonder how it can damage my divine soul. Knight Sorrow was not used to Tong Qing's eye technique. He felt that his divine soul was being attacked and he felt a little dizzy. However, his divine soul was stronger than ordinary people. Although he felt uncomfortable, he was still able to withstand it. However, Knight Sorrow did not understand why Tong Qing's eye technique would affect his divine soul. He did not feel that his divine soul was being attacked. This was strange. You don't understand, right? There are many things that you don't understand. Rookie in the realm of the gods. This attack dealt a certain amount of damage to Knight Sorrow. Tong Qing laughed arrogantly and said, I thought you would have a certain level of strength since you were able to defeat the Golden Demon Leader. I didn't expect you to be so weak. Let's end this battle as soon as possible in order to avoid trouble. Tong Qing yelled, ruler's immortal eye technique. In an instant, all three of his eyes shone brightly. These 3 rays of light all contained a strange power that could destroy heaven and earth. This was a power that Knight Sorrow had never seen before. What power is this? Knight Sorrow was astonished when he saw the 3 beams of light that seemed to contain an endless amount of strange energy. He was proficient in all kinds of attributes, but he had never seen this kind of attack before, so he wasn't sure how to defend against it. Thus, he could only activate the 33 Heaven's secret combat technique once more. After increasing his strength, he created a divine essence trapping formation around himself. However, the divine essence trapping formation that he cast did not block the other party's ocular art. The 3 rays of light that shot out from Tongqing's eyes instantly penetrated the sealed space and landed on Knight Sorrow's body. After being hit by the rays of light, Knight Sorrow instantly felt as though he was an ordinary person who had been struck by lightning. Both his body and spiritual body were extremely uncomfortable. Cough, cough. Even though Knight Sorrow's body was extremely tough, he was still severely injured by this attack. Hee hee. A frog at the bottom of a well. Don't you find it strange? What kind of power is this? Now, let me tell you. This is the Immortal Eye technique rewarded by the Immortal Eye territory. Your realm of the gods is about to run out of luck. You have just killed the golden demon leader, but the realm of the gods did not give you a reward. Do you still not understand what is going on? Seeing that Knight Sorrow was severely injured, Tong Qing explained the source of his power with disdain. Originally, his strength was not considered strong among the sovereigns in the eternal supreme world. However, with the power of the Immortal Eye, it was completely different. He had relied on this trump card to obtain his current ranking among the sovereigns. In the eternal supreme world, there were a total of tens of thousands of realms. The top sovereigns in each realm were 10,000 people. For Tong Qing to be ranked in the top 2,000, he was obviously not a simple person. He looked down on the current realm of the gods and came here to search for treasures without any scruples. There was still some barrier in his strength. So it is the power of the realm of the gods. It is similar to the origin energy of the gods. It seems that the stronger the luck of the realm of the gods, the greater the reward and strength of the cultivator. My realm of the gods no longer has any realm of the gods to reward cultivators. However, I can obtain the power of merit. Although it is affected, it can still increase my strength rapidly. When Knight Sorrow heard Tong Qing's words, he immediately understood what kind of power was contained in the eye technique that he had used. He also knew how weak the realm of the gods had become. It was now the autumn of life and death. However, he had just killed the golden demon leader. Although he did not obtain the reward of the realm of the gods, he had obtained a lot of power of merit. Knight Sorrow's heart was suddenly filled with boundless confidence. In the eternal supreme world, he still had to walk the path of merit. Ha! Why are you in a daze? Are you feeling very hopeless? That's right. Your realm of the gods is about to fall. Despair. When Knight Sorrow was thinking about the problem, Tong Qing thought that he had suffered a blow and immediately began to mock him. Hopeless? I am not hopeless. There is a saying that goes, heaven is strong, and a gentleman will strive to improve himself. As cultivators, there is no need for us to rely on the power of the realm of the gods. When Knight Sorrow said this, a strong power of merit bloomed around his body. In the battle with Tong Qing, he was indeed at a disadvantage. However, his strong belief kept him from feeling hopeless. Ha, you are an interesting person. You have deceived yourself to this extent. I have changed my mind. I will not kill you. I will imprison you as a slave. When Tong Qing saw Knight Sorrow's reaction, she felt that she was looking at a fool who was sitting at the bottom of a well. Your greatest achievement is to rely on the power of the realm of the gods to enter the top 2,000 of the sovereigns in the eternal supreme world. I am not. There are some boldness that you do not understand. Kill. Knight Sorrow could completely see through Tong Qing's thoughts. However, he was not weaker than anyone else. He was not after the top 2,000 or the top 1,000. He was after something big. After shouting the word, kill, Night Sorrow gathered the power of reincarnation in his left hand and the power of primordial in his right hand. He also used the power of merit to protect himself. He activated the power of bloodline and used the dragon's swimming steps to get closer to Tong Qing. Night Sorrow judged that although Tong Qing's eye technique was powerful, her close combat skills were definitely not strong. If he were to fight head-on, his secret skill would definitely not be as powerful as Tong Qing's. In that case, he might as well use the most primitive way of fighting. Close combat to kill. You want to get close to me and engage in close combat? You are thinking too much. Power of the Celestial Eyes. Destroy. When Tong Qing saw Night Sorrow getting closer to her, she immediately became alert and used the power of the Celestial Eyes again. Chapter 2889. The eye technique transformed the power of the immortal eyes into a destructive force. It was a deadly attack. It was obvious that Tong Qing was only trying to distract Night Sorrow when he said he wanted to imprison him. His real intention was to kill him and steal his treasures. The materials that the Golden Demon leader had turned into could be used to refine a ruler artifact, which could be used until the Nine Heavens Supreme Realm. Any ruler would be jealous of it. Tong Qing was good at eye techniques, but he could use them to refine a defensive artifact. Not bad, but you've used similar eye techniques over and over again. How could I not see through them? You lost because you were too confident. You didn't use your strongest eye technique at the beginning. Yi Shan hadn't been able to dodge Tong Qing's previous attacks. This had led Tong Qing to believe that his eye technique couldn't be broken. However, Night Sorrow had the help of the Sea Serpent's eye and a lot of battle experience. How could he be suppressed by the same attack? When Tong Qing executed his strongest attack, Night Sorrow had already seen through it. He successfully dodged the attack and closed the distance between them. God Origin Trap Formation. After closing the distance, Night Sorrow first executed the God Origin Trap Formation before engaging in close combat with Tong Qing. You will soon understand that in a battle of life and death, the most important thing is to rely on one's own strength. Night Sorrow yelled in the midst of the battle. His left and right hands were accumulating the forbidden force and were protected by the force of good fortune. In addition, Tong Qing was not good at close combat. The outcome of the battle was obvious. After fighting for a while, Tong Qing could not even find a chance to break free from the God Origin Trap Formation. Impossible. How did you dodge my eye technique? Tong Qing had no idea how Night Sorrow had managed to dodge his strongest eye technique after closing the distance between them. Every attack has its own trajectory. I've already seen through yours. Night Sorrow's eyes glittered as he said this. His Sea Serpent's eye played a crucial role in the battle. I'll give you a chance. If you leave now, I'll pretend that nothing happened. Feeling that she was completely powerless against Night Sorrow, Tong Qing immediately threatened him. Hearing this, Night Sorrow laughed speechlessly. Do you think we're playing house? Die. As soon as she finished speaking, Night Sorrow broke Tong Qing's left arm. I am the #1 ruler of the Immortal Eye Territory. If you kill me, the entire Immortal Eye Territory will take revenge on the God World Territory. If you kill me, you will lose more than you gain. Since Tong Qing's threat did not work, she immediately changed her tone and asked Night Sorrow to weigh the pros and cons. It's useless for you to say such things. Those who invade the territory of the Celestial Realm will be killed no matter how far away they are. Die. Night Sorrow didn't care about this at all. He didn't give Tong Qing a chance to speak and killed her directly. After Tong Qing was killed, it was different from when the Golden Demonic Leader was killed. She immediately turned into a large amount of sovereign law and essence. If I absorb all of this, I might be able to advance to the upper Divine King level, but I don't have enough time. What is this? Her third eye. After killing Tong Qing, most of her body had been turned into nomological laws and essence. However, his third eye had been perfectly preserved. After keeping the sovereign law and essence, Knight Sorrow immediately dug a cave nearby and set up an array. Then, he started to study Tong Qing's third eye. Soon, he felt that his eyes had a desire to devour the third eye. Immediately, he used his eyes to absorb the essence in the third eye. After absorbing all the essence in Tong Qing's third eye, Knight Sorrow's eyes, which had been strengthened by the sea serpent's eye, became even sharper. Moreover, he could see much further than before. No wonder Tong Qing could see the battle between the golden demonic leader and me. She could see so far and could even see through obstacles. After testing it out, Knight Sorrow realized that as long as he infused his divine origin force, his eyes could see very far and could even see through ordinary obstacles. The effect was even better than using his spiritual strength. This was because if he used his spiritual strength to investigate, he would be discovered by others. However, if he were to observe from a distance, he might not be discovered. Great! The sea serpent's eye is suitable for use in the forbidden area. I wonder if it can see through some restrictions. After thinking for a while, Knight Sorrow put the sea serpent's eye aside for the time being. He took out the materials that the golden demonic leader had turned into and started to forge the Samsara halberd. In the end, he forged a golden heavenly halberd. Although the golden heavenly halberd is tough enough, it lacks some attributes. I will continue to forge it after I find enough materials. After naming the divine weapon Golden Heavenly Halberd, Knight Sorrow removed the seal of the cave and continued to follow the footsteps of the 4 wild beasts. He headed deep into the forbidden area. The evolved sea serpent's eye played an important role in this. It could often find clues when Knight Sorrow lost track of the wild beasts. About a month later, after killing a few wild beasts that were left alone, Knight Sorrow finally caught up with the 4 wild beasts that had been moving forward. The mountain demon, heaven-devouring ant, dragon claw skeleton, and heaven-defying fire blade. The 4 wild beasts were all gathered at the foot of the mountain. However, they stopped at the foot of the mountain. Through his observation, Knight Sorrow discovered that the leaders of the 4 wild beasts were all middle-level sovereigns. They were all golden wild beasts. The 4 golden wild beasts each lead a large number of wild beasts. Among them, there are about 10,000 heaven-devouring ant. The mountain demon, dragon claw skeleton, heaven-defying fire blade, and about 10 sovereigns. Such a lineup is really powerful. But what are they waiting for at the foot of the mountain? Knight Sorrow, who was observing the 4 races from afar with the sea serpent's eye, was extremely nervous. If he was discovered in such a situation, the consequences would be unimaginable. However, after observing for a long time, the 4 wild beasts did not make any movements. There was also nothing unusual about the mountain in front of them. After using the sea serpent's eye to observe other directions, Knight Sorrow discovered more than 20 cultivators from other domains. These people were divided into 5 camps. The smallest camp had 3 cultivators who were hiding in the distance and observing the 4 wild beasts. It seems that I am alone. This should be the central region of Disorderly Burial Peak. It can't be the legendary Disorderly Burial Peak, right? After thinking for a moment, a thought flashed through Knight Sorrow's mind. He had heard a bit about Disorderly Burial Peak from Murongzhenlu. It seemed that every few years, some good things would appear at Disorderly Burial Peak. However, Murongzhenlu had only heard about this from some sovereigns. Some sovereigns had come to Disorderly Burial Peak when they were sovereigns and obtained some resources. Chapter 2890. Although Knight Sorrow did not know the exact situation of Disorderly Burial Peak, the current situation showed that there was definitely something good on the peak. This was not only shown by the 4 desolate beast races and the cultivators from the other domains. This was because the other desolate beast races in the Forbidden Zone had all retreated to the peak in front of him. This was also the reason why Knight Sorrow did not encounter any desolate beasts along the way. I'm not sure what's up with that golden demonic leader. Knight Sorrow felt that his luck was not bad to encounter a lone golden demonic leader when most of the desolate beast races in the Forbidden Zone had retreated to Disorderly Burial Peak. While Knight Sorrow was lurking, a small team of 4 from one of the domains began to move towards Disorderly Burial Peak. They had concealment runes on their bodies and their auras were very weak. If one did not look carefully, one would not be able to see them. However, Night Sorrow had already used the Sea Serpent's Eye to discover them. Night Sorrow kept an eye on them while being wary of others. Soon, the 4 of them went around the 4 desolate beast races at the foot of the mountain and moved towards the middle of Disorderly Burial Peak. Their whereabouts were very secretive. The 4 desolate beast races at the foot of the mountain did not discover them at all. However, Night Sorrow laughed. This was because he saw a large number of desolate beasts hiding in the forest that the 4 of them had sneaked into. Among them, there was even a golden desolate beast leader at the middle-level dominator realm. Roar! Not long after, the 4 of them encountered a group of desolate beasts in the forest. These desolate beasts were a type of desolate beast called Disorderly Burial Tiger. They all had the appearance of a tiger with a human body. Other than the golden desolate beast leader, there were more than 20 dominator realm desolate beasts. These desolate beasts were obviously different from the desolate beasts of the 4 desolate beast races, such as the mountain demon, heaven-devouring ant, dragon claw skeleton, and heaven-defying fire blade. Even ordinary desolate beasts had 30% to 50% of the golden bloodline. They were much stronger than the ordinary desolate beasts of the 4 desolate beast races. They were completely at the elite level. The 4 cultivators who had sneaked in were from an unknown domain. They were relatively strong. Against such a lineup, they actually had an earth-shattering battle. Especially the female cultivator leading the group, who had a silver horn on her head, was actually evenly matched with the golden disorderly burial tiger. This golden burial tiger beast king was clearly stronger than the golden demonic lord that Night Sorrow had killed. After all, the golden devil chieftain was only a lesser dominator rank golden desolate beast, while the golden burial tiger had the strength of an intermediate dominator rank. According to Night Sorrow's judgment, the female cultivator with a silver horn on her head should be much stronger than Tongqing. At the very least, she could be ranked in the top 1,000 of the sovereign list in the eternal supreme world. However, this was only an estimate, and the specifics were not too accurate. However, although the female cultivator with a silver horn on her head was very strong, her 3 companions were obviously no match for the other tigers. After a while, one of them was killed, and they began to show signs of defeat. Not long after, while the silver-horned female cultivator was restrained, her companions were all torn apart by the mass burial tiger, turning into rules and essences that filled the sky. And these mass burial pyro tigers, after killing the silver-horned female cultivator's companion, attacked the silver-horned female cultivator together. This silver-horned female cultivator is dead for sure. It's a pity that they didn't cause much trouble. Night Sorrow saw that the silver-horned female cultivator was surrounded by a large number of mass burial tiger, and felt that her chances of survival were basically 0. He originally thought that after the other party attacked, the 4 desolate beast races below would move. However, the reality was different from what he imagined. The 4 golden desolate beast leaders did not move at all. They did not even pay much attention to the battle at the mountainside. Oh. You actually escaped under such circumstances. You're really strong, but you better not let me meet you. At this moment, Night Sorrow saw that the silver-horned female cultivator used the horn on her head to shine a ray of light into the sky. She followed the light and disappeared into the horizon instantly. Even when Night Sorrow started using the sea serpent's eye, he could not see any trace of the silver-horned female cultivator. Night Sorrow admired this silver-horned female cultivator, but she was also an intruder. To him, she was someone who should be killed without mercy. Boom! Just when Night Sorrow started using the sea serpent's eye to find the female cultivator's location, there was a sudden muffled thunder. There was only the sound of thunder, but no lightning. After the thunder sounded, the golden desolate beast leaders of the 4 golden desolate beast races all moved. They immediately released their powerful divine domains. Clearly, they were preparing to attack. What does this thunder mean? Night Sorrow knew that the 4 desolate beast races were definitely preparing to go up the mountain. He did not understand the cause and effect of this, but he knew that everyone in the world was here for profit. Something good must have appeared on the mountain. Hence, he made preparations. However, including the teams from the other territories, Knight Sorrow's overall strength was definitely the worst. He felt that he should observe the situation after everyone else attacked before deciding whether to go up the mountain. Boom! 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 When Knight Sorrow decided what to do, the muffled thunders started to become more frequent. The 4 desolate beast races at the foot of the mountain also started to become restless. Clearly, they were preparing to attack. That's not right. This doesn't sound like thunder, but more like the heartbeat of some creature. What kind of creature is it that has such a terrifying heartbeat? Could it be that a super powerful creature is awakening? Soon, Knight Sorrow realized that something was wrong. Although the sound coming from the top of the mountain sounded like thunder, it was like the sound of a heartbeat. However, the frequency of the sound was very similar to the sound of a heartbeat. After thinking about it, he was shocked. At the same time, he recalled the feeling of being stared at by beasts when he first entered the forbidden area of Disorderly Burial Peak. He increasingly felt that there might be an irresistible dominator-level existence on Disorderly Burial Peak. However, it might be in a deep sleep, but the heartbeat proved that it might be awakening. And the actions of the desolate beasts and cultivators from the other territories made Knight Sorrow guess that this super-powerful creature might bring a lot of opportunities during its temporary awakening. Otherwise, these desolate beasts and cultivators from the other territories would not be so eager. Boom! 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 While Knight Sorrow was thinking about the possibilities, the sound coming from the top of Disorderly Burial Peak became more and more frequent. The thumping sound sounded more and more like a heartbeat. Awoo! Charge! At this moment, the 4 desolate beast races that were originally restless under Disorderly Burial Peak suddenly charged up the mountain under the command of the Golden Heaven-defying Fire Blade leader. After they charged out, the cultivators from the other territories did not make a move. And when the 4 desolate beast races charged up the mountain, Disorderly Burial Peak suddenly erupted like a volcano, spewing out a large amount of golden essence. This golden essence sputtered out. Whether it was the 4 desolate beast races that charged up or the other desolate beast races that were originally hiding on the mountain, they all went crazy. Chapter 2891. Golden essence kept sputtering out of the dense mist at the peak. All the wild beasts present were in a frenzy. Many wild beasts fought with other wild beasts for the essence that fell down. For a moment, the sound of wild beasts fighting shook the sky. However, this did not cover up the terrifying heartbeat. The loud thumping sound made Knight Sorrow feel very depressed. He could not walk out of the state of heart palpitations. What kind of heartbeat is this? It's too scary. The earth-shaking sounds of fighting could not cover up the heartbeat. Knight Sorrow could not help but ponder as he observed the battle. However, he had just come to the Eternal Supreme World and was not clear about many things. He thought to himself, it seems that it's inconvenient to not have a guide. Why don't I find an opportunity to capture a cultivator from another realm and ask some questions? At this moment, he missed Murong's guidance. Although she was not very good at guiding the way, she knew more things. If she was here, she might tell him what the heartbeat was about. Moreover, compared to wild beasts, he still hoped to capture a cultivator from another realm. With this idea in mind, Knight Sorrow observed the wild beasts that were crazily snatching resources while keeping an eye on the cultivator teams from other realms. For the time being, these teams had at least 3 or 4 cultivators. Some even had 7 or 8 cultivators. He did not have a chance to make a move. The silver-horned female cultivator who had escaped from the wild beasts was nowhere to be seen. Knight Sorrow did not have any targets for the time being and continued to bide his time. To him, these golden essences were absorbed by the wild beasts because they were wild beasts from the god world. However, if people from other realms came to snatch them, the meaning was completely different. Awoo! Just as Knight Sorrow was thinking about what to do, 3 or 4 large pieces of golden essence suddenly sputtered out from the top of the mountain. These golden essences were much larger than the ones before. The energy contained was simply heartbreaking. Even Night's Sorrow, who was below the mountain, was attracted by these essences. These pure essences without any impurities were definitely a great tonic for both cultivators and wild beasts. After these large pieces of essence appeared, the dozen or so middle-level sovereigns on the mountain all erupted and joined in the fight. In the area where the king-ranked gold-grade desolate beasts were fighting, normal desolate beasts did not dare to approach. They were still fighting for the smaller pieces. Night's Sorrow and the other cultivators at the foot of the mountain were a bit envious. However, if a cultivator went up the mountain in such a situation, they would definitely suffer the most ferocious attacks. Even a peak ruler might not be able to survive. None of them dared to make any moves. I wonder if I can use the golden heavenly halberd to disguise the aura of the golden demon leader. If I can, I might be able to snatch some good stuff away from the golden beast king. Seeing the desolate beasts continuously absorbing the gold essence, Night's Sorrow kept thinking of countermeasures. After thinking about it, he felt that the only way was to transform the golden heavenly halberd into a golden demonic leader and include himself in it. However, he didn't know how much of the golden demonic leader's aura remained after it was turned into a material. Whatever. If I'm exposed, I'll escape immediately. Although these desolate beasts are hostile to cultivators, they won't give up the essence in front of them to chase after me. After thinking for a while, Night's Sorrow decided to take the risk. He felt that compared to the rewards, this risk was worth it. Therefore, he made a prompt decision and wrapped himself with the golden heavenly halberd, transforming into the appearance of the golden demonic leader. This demonic leader's body had a certain aura of the golden demonic leader. However, there was only about 20% of it remaining and it was already very weak. Night's Sorrow, who was not sure if it would work, imitated the golden demonic leader's actions and rushed towards the essence on the mountain. I don't know if it will work. I feel like I'm indulging in fantasy. Night's Sorrow, who had completely concealed his aura, suddenly appeared and was immediately discovered by the cultivators from other realms. This was something he expected. And these cultivators obviously did not dare to make any moves. Night's Sorrow was worried about the various desolate beasts on the mountain. He was not sure if they could see through him. But since he had done it, Night's Sorrow felt that he had to do it properly and not be afraid of the slightest thing. He imitated the golden demonic leader and rushed towards the nearest mountain demon tribe with a roar, snatching the golden essence in their area. Roar! Night's Sorrow suddenly rushed out to snatch the golden essence. These mountain demons roared at first, but when they realized that he was actually a golden demonic leader, they immediately fled in fright. Ordinary desolate beasts had an irresistible fear towards a pure golden desolate beast. They did not even have the mood to sense Night's Sorrow's aura. They all ran in another direction. When these pangolin demons were driven away, the golden pangolin king, who was competing with the other golden desolate beasts for resources, looked in Yishan's direction and roared ferociously, as if it was trying to intimidate him. But soon, the golden demonic leader continued to fight with the other desolate beast kings who were competing for large pieces of golden essence. He did not care about Night's Sorrow at all. Looks like this move is really feasible. Originally, Night's Sorrow felt that this move of his was like child's play and was completely whimsical. But he did not expect that at this moment, he would take the risk and use this method, and it would really succeed. The main reason was that too much golden essence had sputtered out. The other golden desolate beasts did not have the time to care about him. These golden essences are really pure. After the first piece of golden essence erupted from Burial Peak, it did not stop. After Night's Sorrow occupied the mountain demon tribe's position, he immediately began to plunder the surrounding golden essence. In about 2 hours, he had plundered over 20 pieces. After these golden essences were plundered, Night's Sorrow immediately absorbed them all. To desolate beasts, these golden essences could increase their intrinsic quality, and even allow them to advance and evolve. As for Night's Sorrow, these golden essences could not only increase his cultivation, but also strengthen his body. After absorbing these golden essences, Night's Sorrow immediately realized that his body had improved by another level. This allowed his strength to increase by quite a bit in a short period of time. No wonder these desolate beasts would scramble for these golden essences. They are really extraordinary. As he continued to absorb these golden essences and the energy contained within them, Knight Sorrow felt extremely satisfied. Just like this, 7 days passed. He had always occupied the position in front of him. The other golden desolate beasts were still crazily killing each other. As for the cultivators from the other realms, they had endured until now. Obviously, they could no longer endure it. Chapter 2892. In fact, they had no choice but to endure for 7 days. The strength of the wild beasts in front of them was too terrifying. They were not a match for them. After 7 days, the sputtering of essence from the mass burial peak became even crazier. The golden wild beasts were getting closer and closer to the peak. The other wild beasts also began to climb up. They were almost halfway up the mountain. Seeing that there were no more wild beasts in the lower half of the mountain, these cultivators began to quietly move up the mountain. At this time, the wild beasts were busy plundering the golden essence and did not notice these cultivators who were picking up scraps. The amount of golden essence that sputtered down from the top of the mountain was very large. Although they had just climbed up the mountain, they quickly obtained a lot. These golden essences can be given to anyone but you cultivators from another world. Knight Sorrow, who had been paying attention to them, was unhappy when he saw these people taking a share. After thinking for a while, Knight Sorrow used the evolved sea serpent eye to observe the top of the mountain. However, those parts were covered by the mist and he could not see through them. At this time, the golden wild beast kings were approaching the peak and continuing to plunder the golden essence. It was unrealistic to use them to deal with the cultivators from other territories. After observing for a while, Knight Sorrow came to the position second only to the golden wild beast kings. After receiving a slightly larger essence, he threw it down the mountain. Awoo! When the wild beasts below saw the large pieces of essence being thrown down the mountain, they became restless. From their position, it was impossible to snatch such a large piece of essence. They immediately rushed down. Bastard! What's going on? There seems to be something wrong with that golden demonic chief. The cultivators from other territories who were picking up scraps were excited when they saw Knight Sorrow throwing large pieces of golden essence to them. However, they soon found that these slightly larger essences brought them big trouble. Soon, the heaven-defying Fire Blade tribe and the Mountain Demon tribe rushed over. Behind them, there was the mass burial Iron Python tribe. The 3 tribes added together had dozens of Dominator-level wild beasts. The large-scale charge scared these cultivators and they quickly retreated from the range of the mountain. As for the 3 desolate beast tribes, their main focus was on snatching the golden essence. After the cultivators retreated from the mountain peak, they stopped pursuing them. It's a pity that we didn't injure them. Knight Sorrow felt a little heartache after sacrificing a few of his elites. He felt that it was a pity that they didn't suffer any casualties. However, in comparison, the cultivators from the other realms were completely enraged. Seeing that the mass burial peak was spewing out a large amount of essence, but they couldn't get a single share, these people were going crazy. Bang! 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 At this moment, the mass burial peak suddenly stopped shooting out the golden essence. This way, the terrifying heartbeat became even clearer. At this moment, it was not only Knight Sorrow who realized what this heartbeat was. The wild beasts and cultivators from other domains also felt some clues. They were all astonished. He could not figure out what kind of creature could have such a terrifying heartbeat. Why did the mist at the top of the mountain disperse? At this moment, Knight Sorrow, who was using the sea serpent's eye to look at the top of the mountain, discovered that the dense fog at the top of the mountain suddenly began to disperse. Dozens of graves were revealed. In the middle of these mounds was a floating stone coffin. Knight Sorrow could tell that the terrifying heartbeat was coming from the ancient coffin. Not good. It seems that we should retreat. That loud heartbeat made Yi Shang's hair stand on end. He immediately made his way down the mountain while the other desolate beasts were distracted. However, Night Sorrow found that he was being watched by the cultivators at the foot of the mountain. Those cultivators had all locked their souls on him. He could completely feel the killing intent of the other party. It seems that they may have discovered that I'm a cultivator in disguise. Now that I'm facing danger from all sides, what should I do? Standing on the mountainside, Night Sorrow couldn't help but think of a solution. If a bloodthirsty wild beast beyond the Supremes really jumped out of the stone coffin, then they would probably be killed. Not only that, even the territory of the God Realm would probably encounter a great disaster. Although he hadn't been in the Eternal Supreme Realm for long, he knew that there was absolutely no existence beyond the Supremes in the God Realm at this time. Thump. 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 At this moment, the heartbeat on the mountaintop suddenly became more intense. Yi Shang was shocked to discover that there were heartbeats in the other graves as well. Dozens of heartbeats sounded together with the heartbeat in the ancient coffin, causing all the pores on his body to shrink. The cultivators at the foot of the mountain also felt their hair stand on end when they heard these heartbeats. However, they were obviously waiting for Night Sorrow to come and keep an eye on him not far away. Obviously, as long as Night Sorrow went down the mountain, they would attack. What should I do? Up, I can't go up. Down, I can't go down. Night Sorrow, who was blocked halfway up the mountain, realized that the 20 or so cultivators below had probably reached a consensus to deal with him together. A divine king against more than 20 rulers. No matter how strong Night Sorrow was, he was definitely not a match. Therefore, he began to think of a countermeasure. Immediately, Night Sorrow used the sea serpent's eye to observe the graves. These grave mounds were huge. Each one of them could bury a desolate beast. He used the sea serpent's eye to see through the graves and determine what was inside, but he couldn't do it. His sea serpent's eye seemed to be lacking some maturity. At this time, Night Sorrow used the sea serpent's eye to absorb some of the golden essence in the spatial artifact. After absorbing a large amount of golden essence, Night Sorrow's eye suddenly emitted a golden light. Why is it so hazy inside? After using the golden essence to strengthen the sea serpent's eye, Night Sorrow could immediately see through the graves. He saw that the graves didn't contain corpses as he had imagined, but some green gas. It looked somewhat similar to clouds, but not quite the same. What the hell are these green clouds? As Night Sorrow looked through the graves, he couldn't help but think. He knew too little about the Eternal Paragon world. He had no idea what these green clouds were. As for the ancient stone coffin in the middle, not only could he not see through it, but he also suffered a backlash because of his observation. Even his eyes were bleeding. Ka. 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 Chapter 2893. It's broken. I wonder if the green clouds will come out. The burial mounds began to break apart one by one. Night Sorrow did not know what it meant, but although his clam dragon eye was damaged and could not be used for the time being, he could see the movements of the golden wild beasts clearly. The golden wild beasts became more restless after the burial mounds began to break apart. According to the reaction of the golden wild beasts, these burial mounds are likely to eject all kinds of resources. Whether it was the wild beasts or the cultivators from the other domains, they all seemed to be experienced. This proved that the situation in front of them was definitely not the first time they had experienced it. Seeing that the golden wild beasts had no intention of leaving and were all restless, Night Sorrow temporarily put aside the uneasiness in his heart and moved towards the top of the mountain again. However, just as he moved past the other wild beasts, the golden wild beasts near the top of the mountain roared at him. Obviously, they were warning him. It seems that there really is something good, otherwise they wouldn't be like this. Although they were warned by the golden wild beasts, Night Sorrow's position was only slightly lower than theirs. If there was something good, he should be able to get it. Therefore, he was quite satisfied. As for the cultivators at the foot of the mountain, they were extremely envious. A male cultivator from the giant spirit domain saw Night Sorrow sneaking up again and immediately said to the person beside him, "That cultivator should be from the deity realm, right? How did he sneak up?" Can he do it by disguising himself as a golden demonic chief? Should we give it a try? I think that the golden demonic chief he transformed into was obtained from killing a demonic chief. It has the aura of a real golden demonic chief, so it can't be discovered by the wild beasts. This is something we can't do. After all, we only have ordinary wild beast materials. A female cultivator beside him speculated. No. Hearing this, the male cultivator from the giant spirit domain suddenly brightened and said, he has the golden demonic chief materials, so he can disguise himself as a golden demonic chief. Then we can disguise ourselves as ordinary wild beasts. What do you think? What you said seems to make sense. We can give it a try. The male cultivator from the giant spirit domain discussed with his friends in his domain and began to transmit messages to the cultivators from the other domains. After a short discussion, they all transformed into heaven-devouring ants. Compared to the other desolate beasts, the number of heaven-devouring ants was the highest. The addition of 20 or so heaven-devouring ants was not too eye-catching. You guys really know how to copy a cat and draw a tiger. However, when you were down there, I had no way to deal with you. Now that you're up here, things are much easier. Night Sorrow, who was paying attention to the grave, was also paying attention to the cultivators below. Night Sorrow sneered inwardly as he watched them transform into heaven-devouring ants and sneak up the slope. He had an idea. But at this time, his focus was on the graves, so he didn't immediately deal with the cultivators from the other territories. Under Night Sorrow's gaze, the tombs began to crack. After these mounds cracked, the green clouds that Night Sorrow had previously observed all transformed into desolate beasts that crawled out of their graves. Seeing the desolate beasts formed from the clouds, the golden desolate beasts immediately went crazy. Each of them attacked the cloud-like desolate beasts. As for the other ordinary desolate beasts, they formed groups and fought with the cloud-like desolate beasts. What's going on? Could it be that defeating these cloud-like desolate beasts will give me something good? Night Sorrow was surprised when he saw these desolate beasts forming groups and fighting with the cloud-like desolate beasts. He and the cultivators who had transformed into heaven-devouring ants were obviously at a loss. However, Night Sorrow's reaction was so fast that he didn't give the other golden desolate beasts or ordinary desolate beasts a chance to suspect him. He immediately found a tiger-like desolate beast and started fighting. Night Sorrow was clear about the nature of the cloud-like desolate beasts. He originally thought that their attacks would be soft. But soon, he found that these cloud-like desolate beasts were ferocious and close to the golden desolate beasts. Even he found it difficult to deal with them. Moreover, their toughness was shocking. They were even stronger than his body. Fortunately, he was using the body of the golden demonic lord to fight. Boom! After fighting for about an hour, Night Sorrow and the cloud-like desolate beast in front of him still hadn't come to a conclusion. The golden heaven-defying fire saber monarch defeated the cloud-like desolate beast in front of him. The cloud-like desolate beast that was killed by the heaven-defying fire saber monarch immediately turned into a material that looked like essence gold. The aura of a supreme being. Night Sorrow, who was fighting against the cloud-like desolate beast in front of him, immediately reacted. What would he get if he killed the desolate beast in front of him? A genuine supreme being material. Although the heaven-defying fire saber monarch obtained a supreme being material the size of a fist after killing the cloud-like desolate beast, it was definitely a genuine supreme being material. This was because supreme being materials were extremely rare. Many true supreme beings didn't even have a supreme being artifact. Most people's divine artifacts were dominator divine artifacts. It was just that some supreme being materials were added to it. Seeing that killing the cloud-like desolate beast would give him supreme essence gold, Night Sorrow's attacks immediately became sharp. As for the golden heaven-defying fire saber monarch, after killing the cloud-like desolate beast in front of him, it immediately pounced on the other cloud-like desolate beasts. The heaven-defying fire saber monarch, who was originally attacking the cloud-like desolate beast, immediately gave way to him when they saw the fire saber monarch rushing over. Together with the other heaven-defying fire saber monarch, they continued to pin down another cloud-like desolate beast. Apart from the heaven-defying Fire Saber Monarch, the other Desolate Beast clans behaved similarly. This was because after the cloud-like Desolate Beast appeared, if it wasn't pinned down, it would slowly disintegrate in the air. A disintegrated cloud-like Desolate Beast wouldn't produce Supreme Essence Gold. Boom! When Night Sorrow killed the cloud-like Desolate Beast in front of him, he also obtained a piece of Supreme Essence Gold. At this moment, he realized that other than the Desolate Beast that was pinned down, the others had already dispersed in the air. At this moment, the cultivators from the other territories that had transformed into heaven-devouring ants had already killed a Desolate Beast and were fighting with other Desolate Beasts. Night Sorrow looked around and realized that, including the one that he had just killed, they had pinned down a total of 4 cloud-like Desolate Beasts. It seems like you all came from 4 different territories. If you want to kill 4 cloud-like Desolate Beasts in a harmonious manner, each territory will get a piece of Supreme Essence Gold. That's a good idea, and it's very harmonious. However, how can I let you take away something that belongs to the realm of the gods so easily? Chapter 2894. Night Sorrow imitated the Golden Demonic Monarch's voice. The similarity was only 60 to 70%, and the tone was a little strange. It was very different from a real wild beast. But after shouting those words, all of this was no longer important. Many wild beasts, including the Golden Demonic Monarch, all looked at the 20 or so cultivators disguised as demonic monarchs. Not good. Give up on these cloud beasts and retreat. The male cultivator from the Giant Being clan realized that something was wrong and immediately shouted to everyone. Actually, at this time, everyone knew what was going on without him shouting. Everyone cast a hateful look at Night Sorrow and immediately ran down the mountain. Kill! While they were running, they naturally unleashed their best body techniques and released all of their auras. The wild beasts present were not willing to give up when they realized that everyone was a cultivator. The kings, including the demonic monarchs, all ordered their clans to chase after the fleeing cultivators. Although there were many cloud beasts in front of them that had not been killed, they chose to give up. Obviously, to these wild beasts, the infiltration of cultivators was intolerable. The golden demonic rock spread its wings and had the power to cover the sky. In the blink of an eye, it caught up with a female cultivator from the Giant Being clan. This female cultivator was very flustered as she fled. Although she had the strength of a middle-level dominator, her body was torn to shreds by the golden demonic rock. Although the others from the Giant Being clan were angry, they did not dare to continue fighting. The leading male cultivator from the Giant Being clan took out a magic weapon and temporarily repelled the golden demonic rock that caught up with them, increasing the distance between them. Cultivators of the heavenly realm, just you wait. The leading male cultivator from the Giant Being clan did not manage to snatch back his companion's body. Seeing her being torn to shreds, he immediately looked at Night Sorrow behind him and shouted loudly. Wait! I have already remembered all of your auras. I will settle accounts with you one by one. The heavenly realm is not a place where you can behave so atrociously. Night Sorrow did not shout, but transmitted his voice to the male cultivator from the Giant Being clan. When it came to cultivators from other territories who treated the god realm like their backyard, Yishang memorized their auras very clearly. What he used was the tracking secret method he learned from the Horn clan. When he left the forbidden area, he could still track them. However, Night Sorrow did not follow the wild beasts to chase after the cultivators from other realms. Instead, he used the concealment rune to quietly hide underground and stay there without anyone noticing. At this moment, the cloud mist desolate beasts were no longer restrained. They began to dissipate one by one. However, the desolate beast army did not chase too far, so he could not attack. Soon, the remaining 20 or so cloud beasts were reduced to 5. From 5, it became 3, and finally, there was only 1. At the same time, a few of the gold leaders among the wild beasts had successfully caught up with some of the otherworldly cultivators who were fleeing in different directions. The two sides engaged in a fierce battle. Every single one of these cultivators from other territories had extremely powerful existences among them. At the very least, it would be able to contend against a mid-level gold-ranked Desolate Beast for a short period of time, preventing the team from suffering too much of a loss. However, as time passed, the other gold-colored Desolate Beasts and some of the stronger Desolate Beasts also caught up. After being besieged, the situation started to become miserable. They began to break out of the encirclement. While they were fighting, Night Sorrow prepared to attack the last remaining Cloud Mist Desolate Beast. However, at this moment, a person suddenly floated down from the void. This person was the silver-horned female cultivator who escaped from the gold-colored Desolate Beast a few days ago. After the gold-colored Desolate Beasts disappeared, the silver-horned female cultivator climbed down quickly using an invisible heaven-piercing vine. She began to fight with the last Cloud Mist Desolate Beast. She wanted to have a share of the loot. So you can use this invisible heaven-piercing vine to climb into the void and disappear into the horizon. However, since you are here, don't even think about going back. The heaven-piercing vine controlled by the silver-horned female cultivator was colorless. If Night Sorrow had not seen it with his own eyes, he would not have noticed it either. In the forbidden area, no one dared to fly upwards. Hence, she managed to escape easily the last time she tried to escape. At this moment, he saw the female cultivator fighting with the last Cloud Mist Desolate Beast. Night Sorrow, who disdained to hide and sneak attack, directly activated a simple concealment rune and appeared from the top of the mountain. He said, "If you had been hiding, you would not have been discovered. Now, don't even think about leaving. The God Realm is not a place where you can come and go as you wish. So it's you. You actually did not take advantage of the chaos to escape. You are really daring." Seeing Night Sorrow, the silver-horned female cultivator snorted and berated, "For your own personal gain, you actually betrayed the cultivators to the Desolate Beasts. You are really shameless. The real shameless ones are you all. You are acting all righteous here. But in fact, aren't you here to steal from the God Realm? What's the difference between you and a shameless thief? Compared to those Desolate Beasts, you all are even more despicable." Night Sorrow sneered and continued, "In the future, with me around, every cultivator who looks down on the God Realm and sneaks in to steal will be killed." As he spoke, Night Sorrow returned to his original appearance. Holding the golden heavenly halberd, he stabbed at the female cultivator. This attack was not an absolute art, but its power was not weak at all. It was something that Night Sorrow had accumulated in the past. After advancing to the Divine King realm and absorbing a large amount of the Sovereign's law and essence, his understanding of the wall intent became stronger and stronger. An ordinary attack contained the unparalleled Sovereign's law. It was not an absolute art, but it was better than an absolute art. Humph. You say it so righteously. But, with your strength, can you defend it? Which of the nearby territories is not much stronger than your God Realm territory? The silver-horned female cultivator said disdainfully and took out a golden vine from her space grotto heaven. This vine was about the same length as the golden heavenly halberd. After the silver-horned female cultivator took it out, she used the vine to smash Night Sorrow's golden heavenly halberd. Boom! After the two collided, a loud sound was heard. As the two of them retreated, they were both shocked. Neither of them was at a disadvantage, but they looked into the distance at the same time to make sure that they were not discovered by the Desolate Beasts in the battle. However, what made the two of them happy was that the battle in the distance was even more shocking. The sound was so loud that it shook the sky. The confrontation between the two of them was nothing. After realizing this, Night Sorrow was relieved. At this moment, the silver-horned female cultivator saw that the Cloud Desolate Beast was showing signs of collapsing. She immediately attacked the Cloud Desolate Beast. After being attacked by her, the Cloud Desolate Beast that was about to collapse instantly solidified again. "You want to fight with me and steal my resources?" Seeing that the silver-horned female cultivator wanted to fight with him and kill the Cloud Desolate Beast, Night Sorrow sneered. Chapter 2895. After increasing his strength, Night Sorrow used the golden heavenly halberd in his hand and fired 3 consecutive shots. These 3 shots weren't absolute arts, but they contained the powerful invincible sovereign law. The invincible sovereign law was completely different from the ordinary sovereign law. It contained an invincible Tao. Lunatic. You're a lunatic. Seeing that he was holding back the cloud beast, Night Sorrow actually went crazy and attacked even more fiercely. Moreover, he didn't care about the cloud beast in front of him at all. One had to know that when a cloud beast was killed, it would drop supreme being materials. Not to mention sovereigns, even supreme beings wouldn't be unmoved by such materials. However, Night Sorrow didn't care at all and fought with it as if he was guarding his home. The silver-horned female cultivator, who had given up on the cloud beast and fought with Night Sorrow, roared angrily. She was different from the others. She had just climbed down from the void and hadn't obtained any supreme being materials. She was very indignant. You can call me a lunatic or a fool. It's impossible for you to plunder the resources of the heavenly realm in front of me. The silver-horned female cultivator also increased her strength and tried her best to block the 3 consecutive shots. Night Sorrow said coldly. He used a spear art. This move was called the Reincarnation 9 Heavens art. It was strengthened after Night Sorrow absorbed the invincible sovereign law and essence. It was different from all the previous spear arts. The Reincarnation 9 Heavens was used. It was as if all the energy in the surrounding void was being sucked in, creating an extremely powerful aura. Moreover, the entire void bloomed with a golden light. Such a move was so powerful that it might even alarm the groups of desolate beasts that were fighting with the cultivators of other territories. However, Night Sorrow didn't care at all. I've never seen a lunatic like you. Facing Night Sorrow's move, the silver-horned female cultivator felt very helpless. She had the ability to resist this move, but if she used it, it would definitely attract the attention of other desolate beasts. This was something she didn't want to see. Therefore, facing such a move, the silver-horned female cultivator once again used her escape technique and returned to the sky. This made her very unwilling, because every time she returned to the sky, she needed a lot of time to recover. Last time, she had recovered for a few days. She probably wouldn't be able to get the opportunity in front of her. You lost because you didn't have the courage to fight. I still have to thank you for helping me capture the desolate beast in front of me. Just as the silver-horned female cultivator was escaping back into the sky, Night Sorrow's Reincarnation 9 Heavens struck the cloud beast ferociously. The desolate beasts that had yet to disappear were almost instantly killed by this attack. Thus, the battle that followed became extremely simple. Night Sorrow easily killed him, and obtained the supreme being material that he had turned into. Damn it! You actually got off easy. Above the void, the silver-horned female cultivator was infuriated when she saw Night Sorrow kill the cloudy mist desolate beast. However, what made her unhappy was yet to come. After Yishang killed the last cloud mist desolate beast and turned it into supreme materials, Yishang's eyes lit up. The lid of the ancient stone coffin had actually opened. A golden cloud desolate beast appeared from within. This golden cloud desolate beast was obviously stronger than the other cloud beasts, but it didn't have any battle techniques. Night Sorrow, who had already adapted to how to battle with the cloud beast, killed it in the end despite the difficulty of the battle. He obtained a piece of supreme being material the size of a head. This was about 20 times bigger than the supreme being material obtained from killing normal desolate beasts. The silver-horned female cultivator was extremely unhappy, and she was also extremely envious. However, she had no choice. Every time she went up into the sky, she had to expend too much energy, so she didn't have the chance to come down and fight for the opportunity. What do you have to be envious of that belongs to the realm of the gods? Night Sorrow looked at the void with disdain. He had seen the silver-horned female cultivator's vine before, and he was about to strike it down. However, at this moment, another golden cloud desolate beast crawled out from the ancient stone coffin. Night Sorrow, who didn't know when the army of desolate beasts would return, felt that the silver-horned female cultivator wouldn't be able to obtain anything from above, and thus continued to battle with the desolate beasts in front of him. Soon, he killed another golden cloud desolate beast. He obtained another piece of supreme being material the size of a head. At this moment, seeing that Night Sorrow had successfully obtained 2 pieces of supreme being material, the silver-horned female cultivator was so angry that she vomited blood. However, she could only watch, and she couldn't come down. 2 pieces of supreme being material, even if I can't forge a supreme artifact, I should be able to strengthen the golden heavenly halberd to a certain extent. There's actually more. Just as Night Sorrow was lamenting about his harvest, another golden cloud desolate beast crawled out from the ancient stone coffin. However, Night Sorrow, who had consumed a vitality recovery elixir, was about to fight with it, when he realized that the army of desolate beasts had returned. At this moment, they had already reached the foot of the mountain. It was impossible for him to retreat after killing the golden cloud desolate beast. Serves you right. Let's see how you can retreat. In the void, the silver-horned female cultivator saw that the army of desolate beasts had returned, and she sneered at Night Sorrow. She wanted to see the scene of him being torn apart by the desolate beasts. What should I do? If I leave now, there's a high chance that I can escape, but I'm not willing. If the current Night Sorrow continued to pretend to be a golden demonic lord and set up a concealment array, there was a high chance that he could deceive his way out. However, he was not willing to let the golden cloud desolate beasts that crawled out from the ancient stone coffin fall into the hands of the desolate beasts. At this moment, the desolate beasts were getting closer to the mountain peak. Why don't I take a risk? Let's take a risk. After pondering for a moment, Night Sorrow made an extremely dangerous decision, which was to enter the ancient stone coffin where the golden cloud desolate beasts had crawled out. He wanted to see if he could obtain more resources. Night Sorrow felt that if he didn't do this, he wouldn't be able to obtain any resources. This was because there were too many golden cloud desolate beasts that had returned. Furthermore, these beast kings had large numbers of desolate beasts under them. Night Sorrow couldn't fight against them at all. Thinking of this, Night Sorrow didn't hesitate to run towards the ancient stone coffin and crawl in. Boom! When Night Sorrow crawled in, he realized that there was a space with a radius of 100 feet inside the ancient stone coffin. In the middle of the space, there was a circular hole. The terrifying heartbeat came from the hole, which was why he didn't dare to enter. Hence, he began to set up an array in the ancient stone coffin. He thought that if there were any more golden cloud desolate beasts that crawled out, he would finish them off in the ancient stone coffin, not giving any chance to the other desolate beasts. He's a complete lunatic. At this moment, the silver-horned female cultivator, who was hiding in the void, was completely speechless at Night Sorrow. She originally thought that Night Sorrow was only ruthless to others, but she didn't expect him to be ruthless to himself as well, daring to take the risk and enter the ancient stone coffin.